Okay. Want to welcome everybody today. Typically, there's a lot of things I look forward to the last curriculum leaders meeting. One of them I don't think is going to happen, and that is looking for morel mushrooms. I think that's going to be pushed off because I'm always like, hey, as soon as this is over, we're headed out, and it ain't going to happen for a few days. So we all. Oh, there's some people in here know what we're talking about. It's too cold. I mean, if you missed Wednesday evening going out and looking for mushrooms, you're going to have to wait for a good week and a half. So. Yeah, the other ones are like, I don't know what, he's smoking mushrooms? Yeah, yeah. So, one thing we always try to do with this one is we need to celebrate, if we have any, raise your hand if you're retiring this year. Okay, we got a couple here. So that means we come around and you're going to tell us what you've loved and what you're planning on. Yeah, what you're going to do when you grow up.
And Randy, it's funny you should say that because you know that's what I always say. What am I going to do when I grow up? I'm still trying to figure that out. Well, this is early in the agenda. I was expecting this later this afternoon. Okay. Well, I am Becky Greer, and I am going to retire August 1, so I still have lots of work yet to do. Got to get through test season and a few other things, but it has been a joy to be a curriculum leader. There isn't a job, though, that I haven't done in the last 46 years that I haven't loved. So it is with that, I wish you all well. I will be out and about. There's still work I want to do in education, so that will continue. At the same time, my hope is to be able to do that anywhere in the world.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Cromer. I've been an administrator in public ed 35 years. I've been in many districts around the Topeka area. I got into administration because of a passion that I got as a teacher, a math teacher in curriculum and instruction. So my greatest memories are probably like yours, working with a group of turned-on people about education, and you actually are making things better for kids and that passion for learning. For me, kids not learning is like a cancer. I hate it. I literally hate it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to learn how to sleep. I got to get better at that. So that's what I'm going to do. Hope to head out to the mountains and do some fly fishing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Awesome. That means you're all back next year. Good deal. Okay. Well, it's time that we're going to turn this over to our illustrious DJ, Dr. Randy Watson. He's got an awe-inspiring message for us this morning.
Brad's been sick and now he's delirious. So good to see everyone, and congratulations to those retiring. We will miss your leadership, but we appreciate everything that you've given, and I can concur. Sleep sounds good. I like that. Sleep does sound really good. What a wonderful assessment literacy that you got to go through this morning. So thank you for those that put that together. That was just outstanding, and hope you learned a lot from that. But I want you to make sure that you do this, because most of you in here are not the superintendent of your district. A few of you are. You need to make sure that you have these conversations with your superintendent, because sometimes that doesn't translate very well, and they need to understand instruction really deeply too. And some do, and some don't. So all of you know the State Board of Ed. I want you to get to know them even better. But I want to tell you about what we see as a really massive change. That is, we're about a year into it, maybe 2 years into it, that will have an impact anecdotally to you, I think, as we go forward. If you've been doing this a long time, and many of you have, you know that every legislative session, there's a series of laws that come out that make you do things, make us do things. Let's just use last year. At the last second, we're going through all the laws, and you know there are lots of changes last year, and all of a sudden Dale calls Brad and I, hey, did you know we got to have 16 safety drills? We didn't even know it was in there. It got stuck in there. The fire marshal didn't know it was in there, and he was in charge of it. And all of a sudden, we got 16 drills, and you're looking at it as like, who came up with this idea? And we were wondering the same thing, right? So these people, a lot of these people have been school people. Let me just give you a few. Gene Clifford currently sits on the Garden City Board of Education. Jim McNeese is a former principal in public and private schools. So he's got both of those examples. Dina Horst is a former art teacher. She has a doctorate degree in administration. She was a longtime art teacher in Salina. And Ma is a former teacher. Janet Wall was on the school board at Turner. Jim Porter, longtime superintendent in Fredonia, and Kathy Bush, a longtime teacher in central office in Wichita. So they understand your work. And what they don't like is the legislature telling you what to do in your work that have no idea how to do your work. And they have pledged to take that work over. Now, by taking that work over, first of all, there's a battle that they've got with the legislature to do that, but they think they have constitutional authority to do that. We may see if they challenge that at some point, but they're serious about it. So I have a small group of curriculum leaders from this group that kind of advised me, and I shared with them yesterday. And I'm going to share with you over the next several months. These people, through you, through teachers, through administrators, are going to lead such important work as dyslexia, computer science, computational thinking that Stephen King's going to lead. Cindy's, by the way, going to help us lead the dyslexia. And Bowling Task Force and Kent Reed and Myron Melton are going to help lead. Now, they're going to just help lead it. We got some other people going to be doing that work too. Educators are going to take control of the things we have to take control of. I'm going to use dyslexia as an example. For at least 20 years, every year, parents show up in the legislature and say, teary-eyed, my kid can't read, my kid's high IQ, mom and dad are like college graduates and running companies, and my school district X didn't teach my kid to read and didn't know they have dyslexia. And then the next mom stood up and did the same thing, right? Change the topic. And then we do bowling, right? And what's our response? Well, you don't understand. This is complicated. And we beat it off, right? A year ago, Brenda Dietrich, many of you know, former Kansas superintendent, Auburn Washburn, Kansas superintendent of the year, calls me and says, we no longer have support from our friends on this dyslexia thing. You need to fix it, Randy. Okay, now you know how hard that is, right? That's not an easy thing. But here's the deal. These people want to have you lead those hard discussions. They will not be easy. How do you solve bullying, right? If we didn't know that, we would have done it, right? How do you solve this dyslexia? And Steve, you don't even know the mess we're about to get into in computer science and standards, all right? But we are. Anyway, by December, these people hope to have some answers. We're going to be reaching out to you, and there are going to be many other topics come before you over the next several months. So that's a difference than just waiting to see what happens legislatively. So I really thank them. They're out in your schools. I know they've been out giving challenge awards over the last month, and they're likely to be out with you more. So, as you know, these are the things that we have learned from the qualitative research that Brad and I did when we went across Kansas, asking what Kansas wanted in their schools. If you remember those three questions, the first was, what's a successful 24-year-old look like in Kansas? Second question, which these ideas came from, How should schools respond to develop that young person? Over time, then, the 47 school districts in redesign, the 110 schools, and these will continue to be modified, said organize around social emotional. You even talked about that in your literacy. How do you do that? How do you personalize the journey? How do you engage your family, your businesses, and your community? Engage. Can I just tell you, we don't do that. We communicate, we don't engage. And that's starting to bite us in the butt. All right? Parents want to be engaged. I guess, and so do businesses. Stephen can give you a 30-minute discussion about business, wants to be engaged. And so this is something new. And then how do we do this in real-world applications over and over and over? If you expect to be career ready, how do you show up to work on time? How do you meet people and have a good resume and shake their hand and make eye contact? You do it because you do it every day over and over in various situations, right? That's how you do it. It's not rocket science. So these are what we're trying to do in every school, whether it's KSDE or redesign. So I'd like to know where you think you are in your school district. If you're in a school, that's great. If you work with many districts, you can kind of give a conglomeration of that if you're over a district. So get your phone or your tablet, go to menti.com, type in the code, and what you're going to do is on a scale of 1 to 10, you're going to rank yourself, your district, in those 4 quadrants. Okay? There it is, menti.com, 65, 19, 35. This probably won't work because I'm probably not on the internet, right, Teresa? Is that probably right? That I'm not on the internet, connected to the internet? It'll work for you guys. It probably won't work when we try to show this. So we'll see. If it doesn't, our technology people will come up here and save me maybe. Okay? And again, you're going to be 1 to 10 rating this. Okay, we're going to see what happens right now. And nothing's happening, which means just escape out of that. You keep going to menti.com, and he's just going to get us on the internet. Just undo this. It'll show. Should have done that. And then we'll see how we did and where we need to do some work. Doesn't like it. And if we get a little lucky, doesn't like our internet password. Okay. It's okay. Just go to this. Launch it back. Thanks. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share it back with you when I get back because the password won't let us get on the internet. So menti.com, 651935. And I'm just going to ask you as you do this, how many of you on a scale of 1 to 10 ranked any of these above a 7? Okay? Which one? Tell me which ones. Which one above a 7? All of them? No? Above a 7, correct? Student success. So who else above a 7 on any of these? Which ones? Community engagement. Great. Which ones? Student success. Who else? Above a 7. Okay, so I'm making the assumption that everyone else did all 4, 6 and below, right? So we got some work to do. So I want to ask, How many of you ranked yourself the highest in student success skills? Think you've done the most work? I would, anecdotally, I would agree as I go around and just talk to, there's a lot of trauma-informed care, a lot of SEL work, a lot of soft skill work. There's a lot of work, career work being done in this area. How many ranked personalized learning as the lowest? That's interesting. Okay, because there was some superintendents and they ranked that as the lowest when we ran this in their school. So there, have a conversation when you go back. How many ranked business, family partnerships, community as the lowest? Anyone? Okay. That's hard, right? I mean, it's just hard. What happened to us is that there's a lot of things vying for our time, but I want to give you this example because I think it just illustrates, and I've said this week to a lot of groups. So Christmas was on a Tuesday this year. Do you remember that? That's a long time ago. Christmas in 18 was on a Tuesday. So how many of you let school out on Thursday the week before? By the way, that's the majority in Kansas. Okay. How many let out on Friday? See, Chris, you don't have to worry about it. How many let out on Monday of Christmas Eve? How many let out before Thursday, Wednesday or Tuesday? Okay, a few of you. Tell me why any of those decisions were made on when you let school out for Christmas holiday break. What was the deciding factor as to when you let out? Number of days in a quarter. So you had to have equal number to the first and second. All right, that's always good. What else? Ball games, when the ball games were being played, and if you didn't have games, okay, that's another reason. Why else? Would you have any kids come back? Well, okay, probably not Tuesday for sure. It was Christmas Day. Oh, you got to look at when you return in January, which is usually a soft start for most schools in Kansas. Not for the teachers, but for the kids, right? What else? You haven't missed. I think you're missing the number one reason in Kansas. It's your negotiated agreement. What other business would ask their employees when they wanted to start their Christmas break? Did we ask parents? The answer generally is no. Because parents may have said, look, take off like December 15th, I don't think, or keep them until like Christmas Eve night. Take them to church and then drop them off, right? But I'm saying that because we have people working shift work. We have people that holidays are very stressful. I just use that as an example. Again, and my sister, those of you that know my sister, like Lisa, so you can tweet her or you can text her, Lisa, right now, because I'm not going to say anything good about her. I never do. But every time we get together for the holidays, she says she works at Children's Mercy, and there's nothing great about her job. She's in communications, so she doesn't save anyone's life, okay, at Children's Mercy. Okay, I just want to put that on the table, okay? She's not, but she says, we are the most mission-driven organization that you could ever find, right? We are here, people don't pay, they bring their kids, the kids have severe, illnesses and death, and we take care of them, and we have problems, right? But we never ask our employees. We are driven by the patients and the families and what they need, and our employees respond every day. She goes, and by the way, she is a teacher champion, okay? She said, I just don't get why you guys keep asking the staff. If you ask people in Children's Mercy, they want to take off December 15th and not come back till January 15th either. But we have families that need help. Does that make sense? That's just an example and I'm not saying these are easy things because these are culture things that we've developed over a long time. But I think these are just really, really hard as we go through it. And I'm going to I'll have Teresa send out the results so you can just see the results of everyone. I apologize for that as we have that. So, a couple of things. I mentioned bowling. Task force on bowling. Do you know, statistics nationwide, that most bowling happens in middle school? You knew that, right? You don't even need a survey to tell you that. I mean, how often do you get well, we were best friends Friday night, but now we hate each other Monday night. Right? I mean, it's a dumb moment. And, you know, having a daughter and having a son, my anecdotal evidence was it was much harder with the daughter in middle school than the son. And my son's autistic, so that wasn't exactly a joyride during that time, but it was just harder, right? I mean, one day, life's great, and the next day, oh, life's not good. The most common types of bullying are verbal and social. Always has been, right? That's not changed. What's changed about social? This. Used to be, I'm passing you a note saying, right? I'm telling the person down the hall. I'm flipping you off driving up and down Main Street, right? But it always was. Now I get to do it 24/7 all the time. That's what's changed. 28% of students say they experience bullying. And I want to give you an example of this year because I think it's a classic example of people necessarily not necessarily doing anything wrong, but everyone's a loser in the bullying thing. So I had a mother come visit me. That is unusual. It's not unusual that they call me to complain about something that you've done. I used to think Brad and Dale made those stories up, but they don't. We get more calls, and I used to get a superintendent about, you know, did you know? What are you going to do about it? Well, I'm not going to do anything about it, but I'll make sure I call the district and refer you back. But a mother came to visit me. Her daughter had been expelled from school. She's a freshman. Okay, so here's what she did. She came to school. By the way, she's an out-of-district student to where she goes to school. So I want you to put that caveat. She comes to school, she gets her planner, and she makes a list of 16 people she's going to kill. Not a good thing to do, right? All right, so the district of which she doesn't reside says, adios. You know, we can't have you doing that, right? Because, by the way, the list is semi-public, not by the school's choice. And so who's the school already hearing from? The parents whose kids are on the list, and they don't just want the kid expelled. What do they want? The kid to be in Leavenworth tomorrow, like for the rest of her life, right? That's the only way to protect my kid is to make sure she's not even on the streets. So even if you kick her out of school, if you don't file charges, I'm mad at you and I'm on you. The mom's saying there's not a school. The homeschool district won't take her. This district that I had won't take her. No virtual school will take her. What's the reason for that? Money. It's past their time of getting money. All right, no district will take her because, hey, we don't have to, and they're not our problem. So the administration's faced with, I got pressure from parents saying we need to have some execution for the kid that did it in order to save my kid because my kid's going to get killed. This kid is a freshman whose parents, who's single mom, who low social economic, and is now, no one will take her, and now going to come back to some school next year with no credits as a freshman. There's no winner in this, right? Because of bullying and a threat. This is a hard thing to wrap around. It's really hard. So we said we're going to try to get out in front of this. I made a phone call to these two gentlemen. First, I made one to James Regier. Many of you know James. He's a former counselor and longtime principal and superintendent at Whitewater Remington, but his background is school counseling. And he said, Randy, I'd be happy to do it. And then I called Rick Ginsburg. And I said to Rick, tell me who, I know you got to have someone at KU that like sits in some office and just does national research all day long on bullying. And he goes, well, not really. I mean, we got some people that do that. But he said, would you care if I co-chaired that? He asked. He said, this is an important subject on our campus. It's an important subject. I've written a little bit about it, but I want to help lead this for the state of Kansas. That's remarkable. And I give Rick all the credit for that. And they said they would co-chair it. Kent and Myron from our office are going to be heavily embedded, and we've got about 25 to 30 people we're going to meet today 30 to 35, a lot of interest. And they're going to go across the state, and hear testimony about what should be done. We have parents, students, state board members, legislators, but we're going to lead that process just to acknowledge how difficult this is, how hard it is. But I will tell you what the research is becoming very clear on. This device needs to be taken away from most adolescents. It is causing depression, it's causing bullying, it's causing suicidal thoughts. And you can buy these and give them to your kids where they can only call 911 and you, right? But I'm talking about the full functioning things. But just last night, I had to make a quick run to the Walgreens on Topeka Boulevard. That's an interesting place to be in Topeka at night. And I walked in, and there was a young baby, maybe 2, in a stroller. Mom was jacking it up, and what did the kid have in their hands? A cell phone to keep them quiet. Okay? So, anyway, we have to just, it's our era, right? Every era has its challenges. This is our era, and there'll be a new challenge come. So, we're going to listen to experts. They're going to travel throughout the state. We're going to hear from parents whose kids have been bullied. We'll hear from bullies. We'll hear from experts that have studied the issue. They're going to hear all that, and they're going to bring back some work back to us in December of 19. They're going to start their work in about April 25th, I believe. So very, very quickly. And they'll have regulation policy and training recommendations. And guess what? Some of you won't like it. Well, I just know it. I mean, we won't. It will be more, but we're going to do it to ourselves. Because I'd rather do that and have you call Kent and complain and we'll make adjustments than to have it in a law and then there's nothing we can do about it, right? However that is. That's, again, how we're trying to lead this. So if you want to be a part, and the committee sounds like it's gotten pretty big, and you can't get on the committee, that's fine. Show up at one of the places, give testimony. You'll be recorded, it'll be transcribed, and it will be heard. You have parents that have been very active and are very mad at you, send them to one of the meetings, let them be heard, all right? We want everyone to be heard on that. I also want to tell you, this is a little bit on the assessment that you were talking about earlier. We're really excited about this, as you know. We gave the ACT for free this year and the work keys for free. As you also know, the weather wasn't very good on the date that we gave it. And so a lot of you were the makeup date, and Beth will talk more about that later. What was not in the bill a year ago by an oversight is in the bill now. Pre-ACT is now offered free of charge to every 9th grader in Kansas. Beth will talk to you about the dates of that and the possibilities of that later on. That is, we think, big. Some of you already give that. That will save you some money. Some of you don't give it, but now may want to, and we have got some flexibility on dates with that that Beth will talk about. So grade 9. Now, here's what's true about state assessments. We have done, KU's done a nice job, and a lot of people have helped us on this. This is 8th grade. This year, you're actually going to get 7th grade. We are backward mapping, eventually all the way down to 3rd grade, how our kids that take a state assessment do on ACT. So this whole discussion about state assessment is a nuanced discussion because there's not anyone at our level from the state board or from the agency that want us to test prep kids at the exclusion of all the other skills. I've said that over and over. Should not be doing that. Does not mean we shouldn't take it serious. Okay? There's a nuance there. We should take it serious. We should just not be spending every minute that we have getting the delta indicators from Scott Smith, which we don't have in this line, and then just testing that to show an artificial jump. But we do want to do the standards, and we want to do them well. And we can give to parents and kids a correlational score to the ACT, which many of you at the high school level have said, well, that's the most important thing anyway for our parents and kids. And that will start starting in the 7th grade this year, but here's the 8th grade. So there's the cut score in 8th grade. There's the cut scores. There's the 10th grade. And then there's the cut scores. So here's what we know from the 47 schools in redesign, 47 school districts, 110 schools. Some of those haven't even launched, but of those that have launched, here's what I can tell you by fact. Our level of rigor in Kansas is not where it needs to be academically. All right? Has it happened overnight? No, it's happened over a long time. But I can just tell you, grades have gone up. Academic rigor has at least stayed the same. It has not gone up with the number of kids getting A's. And when you make the shift, like some of our redesign to higher rigor, the kids that are being successful with the parents that are being successful will not like that. Especially if they're older. The older the kid, the more they will rebel on that. Okay, the younger you kind of get away with it if they're in 2nd grade. But if they're a sophomore in high school and they've been getting 4.0s and now we just messed with them because we raised the rigor. This is not about, some people here raise the rigor, I give more homework and more worksheets. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about depth of knowledge at levels 3 and 4. We are not teaching to depth of knowledge at levels 3 and 4. It is also clear that all the work that all of you have done through the standards work and the cut scores, and there's hundreds of Kansas people involved in that work in all the different levels, we have established empirically, there's that levels 3 and 4 equate to being prepared for college level work, being prepared for careers. It's empirical, but if we're teaching only to level 2, which is what we're finding out, and you know why we do that? Because the curriculum resources that teachers are following are not to the depth of knowledge that we need. We have too many teachers don't know the standards deep enough because we're just choosing resources and we're following those. So we have to start teaching to levels 3 and 4 and practicing those skills as we talked about in real world practices and thinking about how to do that differently. Kids will respond. We're already seeing that in a very short time. But initially, you're going to get pushback the older the child is, because if I've been getting a 4.0 and all I have to do is go into class, listen, take a test, bring my box of Kleenex for extra credit, right? And all the things that then I like to play that game. And now you're telling me I have to do work and show my work in depth of knowledge at levels 3 and 4 every day, and that's another layer that I've never been asked to do, so why would you do that? I don't understand that. This is important. So when you say to me, and I say this because curriculum people don't say this, but when I go to ed camps, teachers say this. When I go to council of soups, superintendents say this. Randy, the 10th graders don't think there's any reason. The 10th grade kids don't see any relevance in the state assessment. You know why that is? Because we've sent a message from the adults that it's not. That's the only reason. You can tell the kids, listen, when you get the results back, we're going to sit down and we're going to see how you're ready to do on the work keys or the ACT. Are you ready to do career level work? Are you ready to go be a plumber or welder and have that level of depth of understanding? Are you ready to go to Wichita State and be an engineer like you say you're going to be? We can clearly say, are you academically on that track? Not whether you're social emotionally, not whether you can look someone in the eye and shake their hand, not whether you can do a resume, not whether you're going to show up on time, but can you do academic work relative to that? And so we shortened it 3 years ago, right, Brad? 60%. So we shortened it, but it's still an important part, as the assessment literacy said today, an important part of the overall plan going forward. We have 19 applications for Apollo. That's the exact number that we had for Gemini 2, interesting enough. The board, those have been reviewed. The board will be voting on those, yes or no, on Tuesday of next week. And we look forward to working with those districts in redesign over the next several years. Some of those have multiple schools in the district. Others have maybe just one school in their district. As we continue down that path of learning about what all's going on in districts. And again, we just want you to continue to do the change that's necessary. All of you are doing that at the pace that you think you can do it. You know your culture, or you need to know your culture. How fast can you push on that? And what do you need to do? Yes, we need to change higher ed. Michelle's on that. She's working on that. We're all working on that. But we've got some work to do all across the board. Let me digress a little bit. I mentioned dyslexia. How many of you would say kindergarten, let's just use kindergarten, first, second grade? Of the teachers that you have hired in the last 5 years, how many of those teachers in kindergarten, first, and second grade deeply know how to teach reading? You're not raising your hand. You know what? That's what I hear. It's spotty. Do they know how to lesson plan? Oh yeah. Do they know how to? They know how to surface teach reading, right? But do they know the art of knowing? Oh, the kid doesn't know short A. Is that a phonics problem? Is that a phonemic awareness problem? Is that a phonological awareness? Is it a processing? What is the problem? The art of teaching, you know that, right? By assessment and by observation. Good kindergarten teachers know that. So I hear that all the time. We've got to work on that, right? We've got to work on that. It's just one of the things that we have to do. So thank you for everything that you have done this year. It is amazing that it's getting ready to wind up. I will have the honor of being at some of your graduations, both college and high school this year. From probably the smallest will be the Kansas School for the Blind that we oversee. I think they have 2 graduates. It'd be pretty hard to beat that. Someone will have 1, but they have 2, I believe, this year. And maybe the most famous, at least in Kansas this year, will be Ulysses when our young man graduates from Harvard. At the same time, he graduates from Ulysses, and I think you'll see him on the cover of Time magazine right around mid-May, called Is This the Future of Education? He'd love to come talk to your district because we had his family here to be recognized at the state level, and his dad said, Randy, he really wants to go around and talk to other people, other school districts, because he just knows, there are more Braxton. There's more Braxtons out there, and he wants to. I said, there are not a lot of Braxtons out there that are graduating from Harvard. But his point is, he's 16. He's a typical 16 high school kid, right? He loves debate, forensics, he plays tennis, he's not very good, and he's a genius. Okay, other than that. And he's getting ready to go to Harvard Law School, so it's all good. But he's a remarkable kid, and I'll get the opportunity to be out with him and Ulysses. So thank you for everything. It's been 18-19 has been great. Dale and Craig are going to talk to you about funding and talk to you a lot about that. I'll just say this on the top end. In my lifetime, which, kind of parallels Becky Greer, except I'm not retiring. In my lifetime, we've never seen as much money going into public education as we will have seen from the last 2 years and the next 5 years. Never, ever. So they'll talk about how we need to use that. We're going to have money. All right, we should be able to pay people better. We should be able to get people better. We should be able to help kids that need help, right? We're going to have to be really aggressive and think differently how we do that, and I really look forward to your leadership in doing that. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the spring. Dale and Craig. Did you bring donuts?
No, we're on state budget. Randy, you was talking about a phone call. I just got one a little bit ago. We get about 2 a day. This one was unique. The kid was either kindergarten or first grader, autistic kid. He got sick and vomited and got all his clothes and all that. In the bathroom, they called up the parent and told him to come get the child, go home and get him cleaned up and all that. Normal. Then they told the parent, and you got to go clean up the mess he made. Sometimes we just don't use very good judgment, you know. And of course, the parent was ticked off and so forth. We're going to talk about something a little bit different today. We'll get to the money in a little bit, but you're under the gun. And that is, we're pumping in this right now over $400 million in at-risk programs. And there are some of the people you chose to represent you in Topeka that believes that at-risk money is not being spent very effectively. And what's kind of sad about it, in all honesty, is the tool, they're using state assessment to evaluate it. Take a look, if you haven't, and I'm sure all of you have, at how well your kids, we're going to have to break it down. And it's supposed to be, you're supposed to have evidence-based programs. This thing isn't over in this respect. And it worries me big time about where we're headed. Randy and Brad both tried to explain there's more than tests on one day. Brad, you want to tell them how effective that was? But it's evidence-based programs. Are all of the at-risk programs you got evidence-based, and you can prove it? And you're going to. And the next issue is, are we showing results? Is the results for at-risk programs? Are we improving? Are we making a difference? That's going to be evaluated, and I can tell you this right now. They're going to ask us to do an evaluation of that before you even hardly get the money. They're going to use this. They'll look at this year's test scores, I believe. And as you well know, you don't turn it around overnight. So I don't know what we do to put more emphasis on that. Somebody asked that, what do you spend your at-risk money for? Salaries. That won't fly. If you're asked that, it may be for teacher salaries for something, but it's about the program, not about salaries, because they're going to interpret that, well, it's not for at risk. You know, if you're doing some of that, you may want to say reducing class size, but you don't say salaries, because that won't mean anything. You talk about the program.
So in all of your at-risk plans, when you report to us how you're spending your money, don't copy and paste from prior years, which that happens. Not,
this group wouldn't do that.
Whoever in your district, have a conversation with them. If it's to reduce class size, you got to be, if you look on our website, we don't list vendors. We list best practices. So try and tie it to an evidence-based best practice and be clear what you're wanting to drive. What is it that you're wanting to do? Either increase student achievement, reduce behavioral, just be a lot more clear, because we have to pull from what you report and give a report to the legislature. There is more that you're trying to drive than just a state assessment test score. Even if you show that you're trying to move formatives, interim, whatever it is, we just need you to be a little more clear overall as a state, because a lot of those plans, it's just copy and pasting from next year. So for us to advocate for you, try to be a little more specific about what you're trying to drive and how you're using it.
The annual report, where is Tate here? Tate, didn't he kind of, Tate, don't you kind of monitor the annual plan, annual report? All right, because that's going to be important. You can't just do like you did last year. And here's what happens. This won't happen in your district. I promise you that. But in some districts, the superintendent will hand it to somebody. They'll fill it out. May not work with that risk. They'll fill it out and send it in, and nobody else may look at it. I'd make sure your boss looked at it. You know, and be sure he signs off on it, because this is crucial. Now, let me tell you why I say that. Guess what we're going to have a post-audit on? Anybody want to guess? At risk. Going to start probably around the 1st of July. Did any district want to volunteer? Because they'll pick out certain districts. Anybody want to volunteer? Cindy, did Bueller volunteer? You was praying. I'm sorry. But anyway, you see what I mean? So they're going to follow it up with an audit. And right after that audit, they're going to do another one. And that's bilingual. That's a poor term for it. And the legislators, and you emphasize this, if you're one of the districts that they check on, be sure you emphasize not all kids, when it comes to teaching the English language, are alike. Let me give you a quick example. Anybody here from Holton? Got a call a couple of years ago from Holton, and a family moved in from Guatemala. And old Dennis Stone's up there then, and he was nervous, a frog on the freeway. And I said, Dennis, what? Settle down. Whoa. Settle down a little bit. 3 kids moved in. He had a 15-year-old kid that had never been in school and did not know how to hold a pencil. And so, anyway, we got a hold of some of Scott's people. They went up and helped him. But I don't know what we do to emphasize this, but we're under the looking glass on this deal, or the mirror, whatever. And there's some legislators that you've chosen that want to say money don't make a difference, so we're pumping it in, we're not getting the money we need. And we're going to prove them wrong. We'll prove them wrong. But look at that at-risk program carefully, because they're going to, my guess, I don't know this, my guess they're going to take about, 20, what do you say, Craig, about 20 districts probably, about 20 districts, and they'll go into finite detail in your district. They may not even come to your district, talk to you. It may be all they'll do is do it all on data, which would be a big mistake. But you guys are experts on this, but in the bilingual area, a kid coming in from Guatemala who's never been in school is a lot different than a kid that come out of Mexico that's been in school and is a good student and transition. Big difference. They were, for a while, when the Senate stopped this, they was going to put a cap on how many years we'd fund bilingual. First cap was what? 5 years. And then we changed it to 7, and then we did away. Then we took it back out. We have a test, and if you pass the test, you're fine. If you're not, you're still not there. So, have you guys got any suggestions what we can do to help emphasize this? And because we got people just working their tails off, but anyway, they're gonna look at test scores. And Randy and Brad did a good job of explaining it, why they shouldn't, what they were, and I don't think it didn't change it. So we're still there. And it should be evidence-based programs. So any questions on that point? I'm not an expert on that, but boy, I sure got tired of listening to it. The other thing, just on accountability. You have to publish the budget document, and we're required to prepare a one-page accountability report. Now get this, for your district and for every attendance center. We have to have on our homepage, and you have to have a link that goes straight to it. And it has to be you got to have it clear. What was the language they used on that? They said it had to be.
You got to have a button on your homepage, clearly identified, says accountability reports. And for the performance piece of that, your assessment data, you just link to our website. For the school finance piece, you actually have to have those documents on your website, which you already do in most cases anyway. But it wasn't easy enough for them to find the data in some cases. Even though it was there, they wanted it a little more clear.
So we got to redo all this. Now think about that. Who's here in Wichita? Anybody? Here in Wichita? When Wichita comes up, they'll have the district, and they got at least 100 attendance centers. So there'll be a link for the district, and then there'll be after 100 links for the buildings. It'll be a challenge.
So one thing under ESSA, we have to do this anyway. But what we didn't want is them to create this legislative report that only included state assessments. So when you go out on the report card right now, you have to click a bunch of different links to look at graduation, to look at any demographic. It's all, you're all knowledgeable, but you have to find it. And sometimes, so we will have a completely new website next year with everything, including the accountability report. There will be a one-pager where we summarize a lot of that, including post-secondary, and it'll be a front back you can print off for your building in your district. We were going to do it anyway. We wanted to include way more than just test scores. So there'll be a lot on there. It'll be new. You will just link to it, but we'll provide it for you.
Now, by the way, he emphasized ESSA, and all we have to do. I don't emphasize ESSA very much because I'm trying to get appropriations so we can do that. You with me? They say, well, if federal government requires it, let them pay for it. But when you put it in state law, Fed says, no, you can't do that. That's your responsibility. You put it in state law. So, and yeah, that's what I was saying nicely, yes. But we just did a fiscal note on that the other day. We're trying to get a little bit of money to do all this. A lot of our folks think that a 10-hour day is more than adequate. So anyway, we're working on that. We'll get around that. Craig, tell them about the financial part, on the accountability on that.
The financial reports really haven't changed a lot. Most of them you have on your website already. They've added a couple of things. One they were going to add, they took out, which had to do with local resources. We will now report an FTE on your virtual students separately, so it's just specific virtual students and what that FTE is. And we will also report, you'll have to give it to us first, how much you've spent as a district for legal processes involved in constitutionality of school finance. Yeah. Article 6, Section 6. Yeah. Back to July 1 of 2010.
So we're going to start with 10-11 school year. How much you contribute? What it is. Just say what it is. Schools with fair funding. How much did you contribute? 11, 12. Go through every year. How much? And that don't have much to do with kids. But anyway, we have to collect that from you. And here's what worries us a little bit. There's a lot of you in here in a school district probably that may have been involved in that court suit back 4, 5, 6 years ago, and you started in your job, superintendents knew, board clerks knew, nobody even knows it. They won't even know that they were in it. At one time, there was close to, 80 people, I think, involved in that, help finance it. Now we're down to, I don't know, 35, 40, whatever it is. But the bottom line has changed. Some did, some added, whatever. So the bottom line is they're going to have to go back to the archives, and we're not sure how many of them got records, financial records back in 10, 11. But that's what it says, starting July 1 of 10, clear.
And the budgets you send us aren't broken out to that detail, so that's why you have to provide it for us. We don't have that. Didn't know we needed it till today.
Now, one more thing I want to share with you. Had it not been for particularly 3 senators who was on the conference committee, your job and what you need to do was double what needs to happen. They eliminated a lot of things that the Senate would not buy. For giving an example, and they were very calm, cool, and collected. Well, one was bilingual at 7 years. Another one. The Senate says we're not doing that. That was local revenue. They wanted it broken down, finite detail. How much property tax? How much motor vehicle tax? How much recreational vehicle tax? How many fees? Think about that. Can you imagine a large school district having to do the fees for all student classes? Well, all those types of fees, donations were in there, and the Senate said, no, we're not buying that. And what else was it, Greg? You remember?
One of the biggies, they had about 3 different sections dealing with bullying, and they dropped all those out in deference to what Randy was talking to you about earlier. Since the state board is taking that on, they decided not to. One of the issues they had, they wanted us to put in a hotline for bullying prevention until they found out there's already a hotline for bullying prevention.
I tell you what, though, see, you guys laugh about that. You got to blame because they didn't know. We did. Next morning, I went and told Craig, I said, all right, make a list. I want everything they don't know, I want you to go tell them. But anyway, the bottom line.
I just got back an hour ago.
But that was truthful. They did. They held up and had a brochure, one of them did, from the senators, and said, we already got one. So we got worked over because the other side didn't know it. But there's a lot of things those senators deserve a pat on the back. Another one that they wanted to get involved in was they wanted to mandate financial literacy and computer science. You'd never, well, you might. You guys are intellectual. But anyway, think about this. You'd never guess probably who was the one promoting computer science as a graduation requirement. You want to guess? Cerner. Cerner was the big pusher, and they're pretty effective. And so, anyway, they decided, the Senate said, no, we're not going to mandate that. So that's really what it is, state board matter. That's not their issue.
There was also a provision in the bill that would have required every superintendent to sign and certify that the budget was appropriated in such a manner that every student would meet the Rose standards.
Now, what you think about that? All right, Brother Tappan. I know what we're going to do. We give it to you. Okay, here. You sign this, that we put enough money for this purpose, that all kids will meet the Rose standards. You sign that. There ain't nobody going to do to sign that. All kids meet. That ain't going to happen. So, anyway. They wouldn't accept that either, but you know what that was all about? Maybe what it was all about? Does that have anything to do with the sports suit? At the time, if you had enough money to meet the road standards, then you couldn't participate in suing the state under Article 6, Section 6. So the Senate would not buy that bill. Let's switch topics just for a minute. We have a golden opportunity to help get our teacher salaries up to a more reasonable level. If the court buys this, we'll know the next 4 years how we stand. But next year particularly is big. The Bay State aid per pupil is $41.65 this year, and it's going to $44.36 if the court buys that. That's 6.5% increase. You know what worries us? And we've talked about this. Brad, Randy, and I have quite a bit. We're worried that we may have some board members that might say, well, that's more than I make. I didn't get that big a raise. Or another one favorite is, well, it's the best job in the community. That old fly with a new beginning teacher. You're out recruiting, saying you got the best job in town. They're much more plain spoken. They say, but how many jobs do you got in town? You know, so professional jobs. So the bottom line is they're going to be looking at carefully what happens to teacher salaries. We're 40th in the nation, the latest we got. I can't think of a good reason why we should be 40th. We should be up close to about in the middle, the 25th. And somebody's going to say, and they will, well, you got low cost of living. Think about that. I remember the argument on this. The guy lived, the legislator of Mount Hugon, they lived out in the country, 20 miles from town. He got an argument with somebody who was a legislator of Johnson County, and he went through this scenario. He said, how far do you have to go to a professional ball game? And the guy said, well, I can go to Denver, or I can go to Kansas City, 325 miles, whatever it is. Got my choice. How far do you have to go? Oh, about 20 miles. Then next he said, well, okay, what about supplies? You want to go to the hardware store? How far do you have to go? 6 blocks. How far do you have to give me? I got to go 25 miles. So the point is, I'm not sure that cost of living thing works anyway, but we're competing with each other. But more than that, we're competing with the country. And like we used to steal out of Oklahoma big time. They got a big $6,000 raise. They struck and strike and all that. The bottom line is, we've got to come up with teacher salaries. So, I know there's some positions you have to hire back that you may have cut during the cut years. But we've got to take care of the teachers, or we're not going to have. How many educators, people you work with, said, I'm going to discourage my daughter, son or daughter, whatever, from going into education? 5 years old, when they're with me, that sort of thing. We can't do that. And I don't know, it's a board decision, and you got declining enrollment and all that stuff in certain districts, but the bottom line is, we've got to take care of our teachers. If we don't, you know, the truth of the matter is, this kind of makes the point. If something happens, superintendent's not there, what happens to school? Goes on the same. Principal's not there. What happens? School goes on. But the teachers are not there, what happens? We cancel school. So we've got to take care of the teachers, and we need to. One quick story. John Allison told me this, told this in front of the committee, and I thought it was about 2 years ago. He said a teacher came in recruiting, and he was talking to the teacher about it. And the teacher really done her homework. She had all the advantages of a neighboring district across the line, and they had Olathe and all their advantages in her mind, and she said, Mr. Superintendent, you're $1,500 behind. John said, she's right. The other thing the kids are more thinking about that we didn't, and she had not thought about this. The new retirement system in Canada is mediocre if you're real positive. But most of you are under, like we are, we're under the old system. What's bad? But the new system is, all it is a tax sheltered annuity, the matching tax sheltered annuity. Some of our surrounding states are a little better than that. I hate to say the state that east of us is better than us at anything, but they've got a better retirement plan than we do. Except they don't have Social Security than we do. So, any question on that salary?
And on salaries, the last couple of years, particularly last year, we've made some good strides as a state. We've come quite a ways from where we were, but we've still got a few miles to go.
Randy, you want to make any speech on salaries? You look anxious.
There's a question.
A question, let's have it.
Is there any new information about teacher shortage that's going to be due?
I think, good point. I think we've kind of turned around a little bit in teacher aid programs, more kids. We've got also kids, people with got degrees going back to what we call it. And I think Fort Hays last year. How many? How many?
In the whole, in their program.
No, I mean in those in the transition teaching.
About 200 something.
See, so I think we're doing better in that arena, but if we don't get the salaries up, you can recruit, you can do well, but if the salaries are not up, I just talked to a lady this morning who had a daughter, a teacher, elementary teacher, good one, doing well. She has a little car payment, and she has a little student loan payment, and her rent. She said, I'm not doing any good. I'm not making it. And her rent wasn't, rent was $700 a month or whatever, and a little car payment and student loan. She couldn't make it, and she was feeling bad about it. So they don't want to be rich. They just want to be able to make a living and pay their bills. So we've got to do that. And we've never had a better year.
Dale, is there any communication with the KSDE that they can get that word out? Because it's on yesterday.
Yeah. But at the budget workshops, by then we will know what the court says, and we will know then. But we'll land on pretty heavy. May not come back next year, but we'll talk about every one of
I
them.
think it was Mark Collins put out a report, the board members, something like that.
Yeah. We'll see all the superintendent budget workshops, in essence, 99% of them. But the 1% don't come's leaving, so anyway, don't make any difference about that. Anyway, any other good questions you got? Guys, you're the leader. Academically, you're the leader. You ever stop and think about that? Yeah. Good point. Puts quite a bit of pressure on you to get to think about it. You're the guiding light. And I hope this year's assessments that you are jumping and doing high fives when you see the results. I really do. And I know that's not the best measure maybe there is, but it's one that they're going to concentrate on. The other thing is, if I were you, I would not anticipate there will be any money for the reading program, the online reading program, remember iStation that we provided. If we get it, great, but I wouldn't count on that. The governor didn't put it in her budget because she thought with $190 million going in, you could afford that if you wanted to. It's not very expensive. That's one. Two is there's a lot of pressure that if they wanted to get other evidence-based programs like Alexia want to be involved in and all that. I think there's a good chance they'll turn over to you and won't fund it. It was only about $1.8 million, $1.9 million. We started out, we got the money back in on the Senate side. Then when it got to the $4 billion, they cut it to $900,000. Well, $900,000, that's only about $6 a kid or less. So I would guess, I would not count on that money coming through. It may happen, but if you get it to be a surprise, it's possible, but I wouldn't count on it. Start thinking about that. Any other questions you got? All right? How many of you think your board will raise teacher salaries if they at least 5%? 6%? How many of you don't have a clue? What do you think they'll do?
You're not involved.
Yeah, what do you think they'll do? 2 to 4? All right, 2 to 4, and the budget's going up on the average, 6.5. What are they going to do the rest of it?
Hire people.
Now, let me tell you the next step. I told you about, we're doing an at-risk, the post office is going to do an at-risk audit. Then they're going to follow that up and bilingual. Okay, tell them what's next. What's the third one?
Same year they do the bilingual, they're going to look at your cash balances.
That 15% is the operating. Kick out food service, food service, capital outlay, bond interest, and activities. Kick them out, and you're about figuring around 15% on the average. That's what the average is. And we have some as low as what, 4%, and some as high as there's no biggie.
There aren't a lot of them at 60, but
Any other questions? I think your time's up. I appreciate it very much. Brad, thank you.
Well, it goes without saying, and I think we could all do just a little bit better. These two spend every night over at the legislature, and we wouldn't be where we're at if it wasn't for them. So let's give them just a little bit louder one. Okay, as Michelle works her way up here, I want to share with you just so you can bracket, store this however you want. We ran some numbers statewide. With the money you're going to get, according to this bill, if you put 33% statewide of the money to raises, 33% to hiring back staff or building staff, and if you don't do that, put it towards salaries, and left 33% towards programs, whatever you need, we could, 4 years from now, move from 40th in the country to around 25, 28 in the country on teacher salaries. I'm just a few years shy longevity of Dale, but I don't think there's anybody in here that remembers a time when we were below 40 or even at 38. And if we take the money you are going to get and we build cash balances or we do things, because we've all advocated, and in that includes administrative. I mean, it's just, but if we don't deliver on what we said we needed, it's all on us. So just think about it. As a state, we could move teacher salaries to 25th, 28th in the nation, and we haven't been there in years, and we could do it in 4 years. The second thing, everybody across the state struggles with hiring teachers. I don't think anybody in here would say, nah, we're not having issues. Think seriously about then why doesn't every school district have a teacher pathway? I mean, we have a lot of others. We will help you. Call Stacy Smith, email him, whatever we can do, but we need to work on the other end of building our future workforce. Pay them, respect them, but build it. So something to think about in your district. So, Michelle.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Miller. I'm the Director of Teacher Licensure and Accreditation, and I don't know why I've got to go bribe Teresa to not have this spot. I'm what stands between you, and that lunch looks fantastic. I think there's like tiramisu back there. When I was sitting where y'all were, it was a box lunch, so this is pretty exciting. But I am going to give you 30 seconds. Stand up, get the wiggles out, please, because I know you've been sitting since I came in. So don't leave your seat because I'll never get you back, but at least stand up for a minute. Don't leave your seat. Please don't leave your seat. In fact, I think you can listen while you're standing up, so feel free to stretch, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to bring you a few updates on accreditation. This is that time of year when it's time for your OVT visit. Each system must have a visit every year. That's a given. We've had a couple of systems call and say, well, you know, we've been under transition, or we this or we that. No, sorry. You need to have a visit. You must have that visit, and it needs to be documented with the reports that are inside your system that you fill out as the system yearly report, and your chair also needs to fill out that report. So make sure that the two of you, the system and your chair, whoever it is, curriculum leaders, it's oftentimes you that deal with that chair and setting up that visit and designing that day. So make sure you're articulate about that. You plan a great day. I'm chairing a system because they got into a bind, and I'm working closely with that superintendent to develop a plan for the day that's relevant for everyone that's involved. We're also having a lot of questions about what's the teacher's role in this visit. I'm going to reiterate what Dale said. I've been a superintendent, I've been a principal, and school went on when I was not there. When the teacher is out of the classroom, school doesn't go on quite the same, right? If you're not drawing them in on what's going on in your accreditation process, what your goals are, those are the boots on the ground people. They're the ones working with the kiddos every day. They're making the wheels turn. They're the ones responsible for your assessment results. They're the ones responsible for that higher level thinking. They've got to be in on that. I had a system call me the other day and say, should we be having building leadership team meetings right now? What do you suppose the answer is to that, curriculum leaders? Yes, because who's on those teams? The classroom teacher, right? And if he or she doesn't know what those goals are, you're going to have some implementation problems there, okay? All right, I digress. Sorry, that's just my little tidbit for the day. Usually I say get your phone out, put your license expiration date in your phone, and a reminder 6 months ahead of time. If you haven't done that, please make sure you do that. That makes Susan's job much, much easier. So I did a little bit of conversation about our systems who are up for accreditation. This next Wednesday and Thursday, the Accreditation Review Council comes together, and they will be looking at 8 public and 14 private systems to gather the information from them and make their recommendation to the school board on accredited, conditionally accredited, or not accredited status. We need some additional members to that team. Be thinking about that, be aware of that. We've got some folks that have been with us since the inception, and for various reasons they need to retire and move, so be thinking about how you might want to support us in that role. That would be phenomenal. We have been meeting with our redesign schools and our Accreditation Advisory Council to redo the rubrics. It's time to update those rubrics, and we're working those two processes together. When I came into the room, Randy had the 4 design principles up. We're working to embed that in our notion and idea of the 5 R's, so you'll see some of that work happening. So we did our trainings throughout this school year, and we have some incredible feedback from you all. So thank you for that. That feedback we take to heart. I can tell you that the evaluations were positive for the most part. There's always somebody who didn't like the chicken. That's a given. Somewhere someone didn't like the chicken. We'll continue chair training and system training throughout this next school year. But I'm wondering if this isn't a really great opportunity for us to talk a lot about goals now. System goals, because I know for me, for the system that I am chairing, I'm struggling looking at their goals and seeing how they're going to design any measurement around those. Those goals that you all are designing as systems, they need to be measurable, right? Because in your 3, 4, and 5, if you don't have something to measure, what are you basing your improvement goals and structures around? If you're working with KLN or you're working with MTSS, it doesn't matter to me who you're working with. All of that should be one gigantic continuous school improvement process. Please don't see those as separate processes, because that's y'all working too hard. Work smarter and not harder on this. Get all of your goals aligned and working together so that we're reaching all kids no matter what school improvement process you're working. So I wonder if this isn't a really great time for us to partner with the systems, do some more system training on effective goal writing so that your chair really can look at those goals and evaluate those and the data that you're using. So that's what we're looking at through next year's training. We also want to partner with some of our data and research team folks at KSDE to have them come on board with us to say, do you know what your data is, what it says, and what it's telling you, and how to write goals around that. So that was some of the feedback that we got and some of the work that we're planning to do in the next year of training. The one thing that became very evident was y'all still want training on accreditation, right? Yes? Okay, good. I talked with you a little bit about that notion of where do your teachers belong in this process, and they belong heavily involved in it. The application, IT at the State Department they've got a lot on their plate. So sometimes what we envision when we sit in our separate departments, they look at us and go, you wanted that yet last week, right? Well, it's going to take 6 months or 8 months. Those things take a little bit of time. I'm learning that. We'll get there. So the changes and some of the things we wanted to do into the application, you'll see some enhancements, but there are more coming. No gigantic, drastic changes, because I'm very well aware of what happened when you were talking about uploading workbooks and not uploading workbooks and copying. So I'm trying to be cognizant and aware of that as we guide IT and the folks that work within that system as well. Keep these reminders in the forefront of your thinking. If your chair changes for one reason or another, get back in there and update that, okay? If you've got leadership changes, make sure you go in and update that. We need to know who that KISA contact person is. Keep that live, keep that updated for us. We'll do a survey, it'll probably be late spring, May, sometime, about your visit day. What did it look like for you? I believe we did it last year as well. David has a comment.
This might also refer to, we had a short survey that's currently active about what is your date and who is your chair. Okay.
Do we do a post one too, though? Okay, good. Okay, so you've gotten a little short one now. And I want to talk to you about I used to be the one that sat there and said they, and well, now I'm a they, and that's really frustrating because it's hard. I can't get away from that now. What are they doing? Well, they, me, my team, we're using that data that you're sending in. We're really trying to use it, listen to you all, and move forward with that in mind. So if those visits, we've suggested they be, I try to tell people a minimum of 4 hours, If you're a larger system, you need all day, don't you? Maybe to bring in the right stakeholder groups and really talk about this. But a couple hours is not enough of a visit. And so we are asking for that data, though. But if we see that you all start telling us we're in year 3 or 4, and really 4 hours is plenty, 2 ends up being fine because they've been with us all along, okay? Please take heart with those surveys and give us your best feedback. And we do look at them. And we do want to be able to provide the appropriate accountability to you as we work through this process. If your documentation is incomplete, David's my guy that goes in and pulls all of that. You'll be getting a call from us, because I think, as you've heard Randy, as you've heard Brad, as you've heard Dale talk about accountability for school systems, our system of accreditation is going to become even more important under that realm of accountability. And if I have to go across the street or ask Brad or someone to go across the street and say, of our 286 systems, I only have information on 200, I don't know what the other systems are doing because they're not putting in their data. You've got to fill out that data and keep that data updated. If they ever ask me for that, I don't want your system to be on the list that says they haven't done anything with it. Okay? So it's not going away. I think people still kind of sit there and go, it'll go away. I'll deal with it another day. Okay. Do you have, David, have I left out anything that we've talked about? Okay. Do you have questions on accreditation before I ask Susan to come talk about licensure? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh. So, yeah. So when I work with the system, And if they send me their goals and they say, hey, what do you think of these? I'm telling you, the first time that happened, I went, I can't tell where your goal is, because bless their little pea-picking hearts, every buzzword, everything they could get in there was in there, and I thought, that's lovely. Shorter, sweeter, concise, can you measure it? 2 goals, right? If our goal is relationships, and I'm in USD 380 Vermilion, I've got you've got multiple buildings within USD 380 Vermilion. What goals are they working? What are our system goals? And then what are the building level goals? Keep them short and sweet and keep them measurable. If you are confused, go back to how we used to write a SMART goal. Talk to your special ed people. They know how to write goals. Your special ed folks know how to write goals. If you take it to your SPED teacher and say, is this a goal that can be measured? They're going to look at you. They'll tell you yes, no, or otherwise. Lots of times I think y'all felt like more was better. I am not a more is better girl, believe it or not. I need short, sweet, concise, and to the point. Okay? Ask yourself, can that goal be measured? Because if it can't, what's the point of your visit? If we're sitting there going, well, they bought a dream box, or they got a this, or they got a that, or whatever, but why did they get it, and what good is it doing, and do we know if it's doing any good? Write a goal that's measurable, please. And if you need help, give somebody a call. Good question. Thank you. What else you got? I am having to cancel some meetings in my office now because it's springtime. It's awful. I know this time of year, it's track, it's softball, everything is going on. I know. But you get some tiramisu today. Maybe that will help a little bit, I hope. Okay, Susan's got this one.
I'll be quick with this too, because basically I want to give you a couple reminders. You've seen this before, but in the interest of the more people that have this under the radar, the smoother these operations will go. So the first one is, you've heard me say this, we're about to launch next week the online professional license renewal. So it's launching as an online application. Thank you for clapping. And why is this so important? Because it's between 9 and 10,000 apps a year. It's 50% of our volume. So we think that it will enhance the application process, speed it up, make it better for everybody. You have control, okay. So, no, The applicant role, if you go back to it. So this new system literally guides the applicant through. The first thing it asks them is, do you have a bachelor's degree or an advanced degree? If they hit the bachelor's degree button, it unfolds and says, here's your options to renew. They click on that button, it unfolds and tells them exactly what they need to do. So it's self-paced. A lot of the responsibility will lie on the applicant to make sure that when they submit, it goes to the right district. And or they've given you the appropriate documentation. As far as the district option or the district roles, you're going to be doing the same thing. You're going to be verifying experiences, or you're going to be producing PDC transcripts and other transcripts of credits. But the difference is you're going to upload those into the system rather than mailing us a paper copy. So that's the difference in your district responsibilities. So when it downloads, everything will be all there together. We won't have to send memos and say, we need your transcript, and get a call back saying, do you need my transcript? So.
Why, in the past, have provided information to the applicant, and now you're saying that we have to upload this for the applicant.
Yes, and
Not on the applicant side.
we've been in the process of designing this for a couple of years, so very thoughtful planning went into it. That question has come up, and at this point we're going to go ahead and launch to see how that works. Many districts, it depends on the district and how they manage their application processes. So
It's just going to be a lot of work. And it's the teacher's professional responsibility.
So we'll see. Here's what I'm telling people. We'll see how this works, and if it needs to go back to the applicant and make it their responsibility, fine. But what do you all want me to do when that applicant submits 6 blank pieces of paper and calls it a transcript?
The main
And I don't know it.
The main advantage that we
20,000 a year, 20,000 licenses.
and to be honest, the main driving force behind this was that we were always getting complaints that I have to pay for a transcript to go to my district. I have to pay for one for myself. I have to pay for one to KSDE. And the main driving force, one of the main ones, was that would solve that issue. There's one transcript and it could be shared with everybody. But as Michelle said, my consultants, I said the same thing. We're going to launch it. We're going to see what happens. We're doing a soft launch. We're not sending out over the listservs yet. We're going to give it a week or so to have people find it and take a look at it. And then we'll send out all the notices, the detailed instructions, the link to instructions, that kind of thing.
In October, that our intent is to give Chad, as the end user, more responsibility about this over time. I got to bridge that to make all of those connections at some point in time, one place, because what I have to help you understand is there are some states who let candidates dump everything in, and they only audit 10 to 20% of those candidates. That means 80% of teachers licensed to be in front of kids are never looked at to tell if what they submitted is verifiable. If we are calling ourselves a profession, then there has to be a professional level of standard that I hold people to. If I go to a candidate just submits it, I guarantee you I'll get blank pieces of paper and people who lie to me about what they've got in their backpack. If that's what we want, then okay. If you want some checks and balances about whether we want that candidate licensed to stand in front of kiddos, this is what we're going to build for now to see how it works. Does that make sense?
And what we're building towards, hopefully, is a portal type system where everybody has access, everybody goes in and dumps the stuff, and it downloads. This is our interim until we can get to that place.
You heard me talk about IT, and I also told you in the fall that Dr. Watson renews in April 2020. I'm working with our IT department to get to an even more efficient process, but it's going to be way different than what y'all are doing now. So just whatever you got to do to talk yourself into, it's going to be way different, but it's going to be okay. We're going to maintain that level of professionalism. It's going to be okay. You got a year to get yourself talked into that. Yes, ma'am.
So whose responsibility, what application do we have to have as the district to be able to approve?
Okay, that's my next slide. So this all works just as you do now. There's district parts of a number of online applications already. Everything is accessed through KSDE authenticated applications. This application is called license application. So right now, what will happen, the applicant will fill out and he'll say, I need district whatever to verify my experience. He designates that while filling it out. An email when he submits, the application then is made available to the district to access it. The district gets an email, or most districts, the larger ones, set up and they check it every third day or every Monday. However you work out that process. It goes automatically. Your superintendent can designate who has access to this, just like they do now. So this is it. There's already a number of online forms out there. So now we're just adding Form 3A to that as a choice. When you click, Michelle. So when you then, whoever is processing these, they'll say, I want to look at my 3A. It generates a list like this. You click on select and it opens up for that individual. When you think about what do you need to renew a professional license, it's either going to be experience verification or it's going to be a PDC verification that may or may not include credit hours, right? There's some renewals that will come directly to us, skip your district. So you're not going to get every single Form 3A coming to you. So once you do select, this is, I just did a capture of if they're renewing on professional development points. And there's the upload link. That's all it is. It's a simple upload of the document. And then once you do that, it does ask for whoever's submitting this, the name, the title, and the school number in case we have questions. Then you hit the submit button at the bottom. And you'll notice there's a delete button. If you have a random person, you say this person isn't associated with our district at all, you can delete them and insert a reason that says, we don't know you, you don't work for us, I'm returning this to you. Okay, so those are the basics of how it works.
So the other thing that people have talked about is how can we get My Learning Plan, PDP Toolbox, all of your professional development, like 40 of them that are out there across the state, connected to our IT so that we can take that step out. That's not an overnight thing. It's a conversation we're having. We'd love to have that happen. But again, it's not one system. And we're talking multiple systems attached to our system, attached to a lot of private information. This is big. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Can you show step 4, please?
Can I do what?
There's step 3. Oh, there's no step. Okay.
There's no step 4.
I just want to make sure it wasn't missing. Well, where's the university transcript?
So you've got the candidate should bring you their university transcript. You'll scan it and attach it, and away you go. They've done it one time, so they're not having to pay for that. Was that? I thought that was your question.
That wasn't my question. My question's a technical. Who's the default to get the email notification, and can that be changed?
Yes.
Because if we have a designee, we need to know that they're.
KSDE authenticated applications always sends transcripts to specific individuals, but the superintendent also has the authority to approve access to this system to anybody. So the default is going to be the superintendent.
Access, but how can we change the email notification to go? Is that always has to be?
They can do that. Your soup can do that.
That would be a question for IT and authenticated application
That would be
system.
helpful. Okay, roll it out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I think this is possible because shuffling all this paper since they're there. But on the official PD transcript now, do I have to download that and sign it and then re-upload it to the official? Or since I'm providing it from the district without my signature, is it considered official?
That's a good question, and I would say since you're providing it, you're putting your name on it. This is your electronic assurances, your electronic signature. We'll be fine with that because it will. We know, right? We know it will be coming directly from you, which is another advantage instead of did the applicant make one up and
send it.
I have to order more than one transcript. That's correct.
Right.
Yeah. Can teachers, when they go in there, so like if I have a new teacher, can they request verification from their old district?
They don't do 3A. Remember, your brand new teachers don't do 3A.
No, I meant like a teacher, if they have renewed their professional license, they send it to multiple districts to get their verification.
Yeah, this deals with out-of-state experience. There's many pieces I'm not showing you because your role generally is just going to be from your district, the PDC transcript or experience verification.
To take them to different places and give them, like if my last 5 years has been in 3 different systems, I can get those verifications, the emails sent, and identification of those 3 different places in there.
I just have a lot of teachers that I know are renewing this spring, and so.
Right.
And we know it's a paper online. The transition is going to be fairly long. That's why we're trying to launch now instead of the middle of summer. Somebody asked if they could have the slides. We'll have more detailed ones. We're doing a little training, voiceover PowerPoints, because there are a lot of veteran teachers who have never applied with an online app. Your young ones, they've done it several times. Okay.
Yes, that leads into my question. Something to think about is there could be a Zoom format or something that then we could pull in our HR people, people, this is a change in process for them. And then also, especially for our teaching staff, if there is literally some piece of professional development that we could ensure that something that you all would like to share with us, but then we could incorporate that in even our back to school.
I don't think you're going to need to do that much. I really don't. Anybody need to renew right now? Any of you would need to renew? So why don't you start? Why don't you do your, because I don't know that maybe you will, because I've been around teachers my whole life too. I don't know, but we are going to do some training pieces. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Endless phone calls, and what you call that, I'm
Yeah.
just trying this.
Proactive versus reactive.
Get up online, as long as we have the presentation, otherwise we're gonna call it.
Yeah, we're working to put together some little PD things for that, okay?
And Michelle tested,
I
so
did, I tested
she
it.
made it all the way
I
through.
tested it, and I made it through just fine, and I don't consider myself talented in this regard at all, so.
Okay, very, very briefly, again, the more people that know this is opening up, mentor stipend, collecting the spring information report so that we can reimburse your districts back for state-funded mentor stipends. So last fall, mentor names were entered, and now it's going to open up again. The requirements are you make adjustments to your mentor list, enter the mentees, and then make those assignments matching the mentor to the mentees. And then, of course, don't forget to hit submit. And then that will help us determine the statewide, what that mentor stipend is going to be. The allocation is $1.3 million. So we're hoping that we will be able to provide stipends for those that are doing second-year teachers, at least a prorated amount, but we'll see. I have no idea how many statewide now we have qualified. You see in front of you the qualifications for those mentor teachers. And that does check against what you entered in the EDCS LPR report. So your mentees, it's in, those that are in their 0, year 1, or first year, second year, and third year too, but there won't be money to cover that. Okay, are there questions on the mentor requirements or anything related to this? Again, this will go out on listservs. Says May 1, but I'm hoping to get it uploaded and online before that to give you a little bit more time to go in and process this. Payment goes out, last payment of the year. You have to pay your mentor teachers the stipend. You can't use it for your mentor programs. Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, while do you have a PowerPoint tape? Okay, while he's getting the PowerPoint pulled up, I don't want everybody to use all the film in your phones on taking pictures. I just want to remind you, if you go to my webpage, which again, judging by the number of hits, very few of you ever visit it, but all these are already posted. So all these PowerPoints are on my website. On the top menu bar where it says agency, if you hover over agency, it drops down and says Commissioner, Division of Learning Services, Division of Fiscal. If you hover or if you click on Division of Learning Services, that goes to my page. You won't find on there Deputy Commissioner Dale Dennis. You hover over the title of Division of Learning Services after you hover over agency. Click on the title, that goes to my webpage. I have PowerPoints I post on there. If you ever want to borrow slides that I use, you can steal them. That's why I put them on there, but you'll see a link that has curriculum leaders. If you click on today's date, all the PowerPoints are on there. So.
Don't go too far, because the third section you can answer some questions too, I bet, after Dale's comments this morning. So between now and lunch, we got 3 quick topics we're going to talk about. We want to take any questions, but also if you have questions that you think of later, I'll be here till 2 o'clock. Also feel free to email or give me a call if you have questions. The first one is, I know I had Dean Zeitz here earlier this spring talking about allocations, and at that point we didn't know exactly what we were looking at for preliminary allocations. Well, our preliminary allocations for all our title programs, Title I, II, III, and IV, were posted on Tuesday of this week. So if you haven't seen them, they're available here. The easiest way is to go to the subject index, click on T, and the link is Title Services. and it'll have the preliminary for this year, and it still has last year's numbers. I also have a hard copy with me if you want to check. We always get asked, how much will this change before the final allocations? We don't know, but generally there's little to no change between this. It'll be a few dollars in most years. We feel pretty confident with these. The next couple slides are a little wordy, but what you'll hear is there were increase in funds, but most of our districts lost money. So we want to know why, and these kind of help with it. So Kansas saw an increase of 1.6% in our title funds. But if you remember last year, we took about a 10% cut, but most of it came out of state level school improvement dollars. Well, because of all the rules and stuff, some of that money goes back into the school improvement this year. So we're in basically the second year of the block grant when the feds look at our funding. So starting next year, we're hoping to see some bouncing back of our federal funds. So in Title I, as you see, 1.6%, but it's going to get a little better. But we still have some districts that are taking some pretty severe hits this year in their Title I dollars, especially our larger districts. So for 2A, overall, it's down about 0.5% across the state. It's basically because of things going on at the national level. Our poverty isn't growing as much as other states' poverty. Our overall attendance isn't growing as much as other states. So we expect to stay about even to slow increases, slow decreases. We're looking at a small decrease this year. The last one on this slide is the one that really caught us off guard because there was a big increase in Title IV at the national level. But because of all the poverty and attendance data, we're seeing an almost 8% cut in Title IV dollars. And that's the new funds that came out for the first time last school year. These are our well-rounded, our safe and healthy, and then our technology under Title IV. So we'll see that. We hope as Congress authorizes more money for that, we'll hopefully see a bounce back there. So that was a quick overview of allocations. So any questions just over that? Okay, the next topic I'm going to talk about is just some updates. We've had a lot of requests for our title programs to be getting out, doing more presentations, providing more information from people. So we want to really advertise our KSDE Summer Leadership Conference because we've doubled the amount of sessions that our title staff is going to present at. So the link to registration, which is open for the end of July, first part of August at the Hyatt in Wichita, is up here. It's an all-day Wednesday, half-day Thursday. There's some specialized stuff on the pre-conference day on that Tuesday. But I wanted to show everybody the different sessions we're going to be doing and just kind of give a brief overview, especially for people that work with a local consolidated plan or work with staff with that. The first two are going to be our main ones. We're not going to have any sessions title-wise competing with these two. We're going to have an LCP 101, which for the people that do the LCP, that's going to be walking them through the process, showing them what we're looking for as an agency when these are filled out, talking about budgets, giving people good reference documents. We have a reference document that's available that a lot of people don't know about, and we'll be providing those in hard copy also. The second session is going to be unique to this year's conference. We've never tried something like this before, but we're only going to have 3 breakouts during the second session on the first day. We're going to have a title, hot topics breakout. We'll have an early childhood breakout, and we're going to have a special ed. So there'll only be 3 breakouts, but we're going to kind of focus in each area the hot topics that are going on at that point. So we've got about 6 to 7 areas we know we're going to talk about. But I'm also telling you about this because if there's things in your districts or you've heard from other districts that you really want us to focus on, you can send me emails and we can add those to whichever parts of the conference are most necessary. So the hot topics one is one of those we could do also. The rest of these are going to be more specific breakouts on Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning. Homeless are non-publics. We have 72 districts in the state that serve non-public schools. And as we've gone out monitoring, We found there's a lot of issues we didn't know about. So we're doing a whole breakout for districts that are working with private schools in their locale. Our kiosk, ESA monitoring and compliance, we have about a third of our districts that go through this every year. We have some people submitting data to us and forms to show they're in compliance. I've been getting a lot of emails today because everything's due today. But we're going to walk through everybody through what the questions we're going to ask, what's available, because one of our goals is through technical assistance, we want to make sure our districts are in compliance. So when we come out and look, or when the feds come out and look, we want to make this as easy as possible. So we have a lot of people that are working on this now, but whether your district's in cohort 1, 2, or 3, we want you to be aware of what we're looking for. Then we'll have ones on homeless, Title III, ESL migrant. And then the last one, how Michelle was talking about, we want that one plan. IndaStar is one of those things that we call Kansas Star in Kansas, but it's through the IndaStar platform. And you can do a lot of things in one plan through that. We've had it crosswalked with redesign, KISA, school-wide plans under title, and school improvement. So for people working with that, this will be a good breakout if you're not sure how to use that system. And we'll bring in some of our people from those different areas to help with that. So on our leadership conference, any questions? Okay. Well, Dale talked about these next things already. And right now it's Senate Bill 16 because it hasn't been put into statute. You also might be hearing it called Substitute House Bill for Senate Bill 16. But it talks about our K-12 at risk. So we've got some links that if you go online, these would be live in your PowerPoints. We also have the link to our evidence-based practices website that we've been working. And our team, along with all our curriculum and standards team, have been getting a lot of information up on this evidence-based practices website because it's already in place for this year. It's just under the new law. It's being expanded for next year. You heard Dale talking about some of it and the data, and that's really important that we get that, and I'll talk about that shortly. But this gives you the information. We have links to What Works Clearinghouse, our TASN providers, a lot of stuff to our IndaStar, our Wise Ways, because one of the keys is all our federal funds and our state at-risk funds, we have to show that we're using evidence-based practices for how we're spending all these funds. Our guess from going around and talking to districts, this is happening. We're just not necessarily at the district and school level making these connections that, yes, we are already doing these. Because as Dale said, a lot of our state at-risk funds are used to pay for salaries, but the question is then, what are the strategies those teachers are using in the classroom? And when we're monitoring and looking at compliance things, that's what we want people to understand. When we ask for a list during compliance or on the LCP annual report, we want to be able to track those either back to this evidence-based website, or when we see things and we get information from the field, we can add other strategies that are evidence-based to that website. Because like Dale said, post-legislative audit is coming on our state at-risk funds. And it's been about 9 or 10 years since they did that. So we have a lot of new people in the district and building levels since the last time we went through this. I've kind of mentioned the kiosks. The LCP annual report is the main area where we collect our state at-risk data. In the past, there's been 7 questions. There's now going to be an 8th that specifically focuses on the evidence-based piece. We're right now working on a Hot Topics webinar going through all the steps of the LCP annual report for this year. So if you're the LCP person that does that in your district, you'd be looking for this in Brad's May Hot Topics. If you're not, please let your district LCP or local consolidated plan person know about that, because we're going to walk through what the expectations are, and a big focus on that is going to be the new question, which is number 8, about the evidence-based practices. Because you go back about 5 years, this part of the annual report wasn't terribly important for a couple years, and some people got used to that. and it became important again, and some of the answers we got that are then supplied to the Kansas legislature were not what people wanted. So this is also kind of that reminder of our annual report and anything in the LCP. We're either forwarding that information as data to the United States Department of Education or to the Kansas legislature. So it's just not for us at KSDE to read over and kill some time. It's for data collection. So we would like to remind people when they're filling this document out that this is the data that will be supplied to the legislature to show them how we're using our state at-risk funds. So it's a really important piece. Yes? Okay. Because of our IT, it is being changed. It will be, I believe, 5,000 characters. We don't want everything in the kitchen sink. That's one of the keys too. But I think it was 2,000 characters maybe last year. And anytime, if you run into things like that, there's also a regular comments section. You can add to that. You can send us emails. But that was a complaint we definitely heard last year, and that's better. It's at 5,000 characters. So. Any other questions? Like I said, I'll be here the rest of the day. My contact information's up there. Feel free to email or give me a phone call. And I don't know if Brad, Randy, you want to add anything more about our evidence base before we hit lunch?
The only challenge we're going to have is in the new legislation. They talk about evidence-based practices, but they also switched and they said evidence-based instruction. So we've got some interpretation that we've got to figure out, because then it defines that as your systems have things in place that is peer-reviewed with 5 years of evidence that students under that outperform students that are not. We're like, what does that mean? But it's in, so we're going to, what you need to focus on right now is helping us by just having good clarity about what you're doing. Because 5 years ago, again, it was, we saw a lot of copy and pasting from the year before. We need to be able to advocate for you on what you're doing. So the more you're clear about what it is and what research supports it, and what would help is when we do this, when you go to that link for the best practices, tie it to a best practices, because we have evidence. That's why it's on there. So use our list of evidence-based practices to refer it to. You don't, if you're doing something brand new that's not on there and there's evidence, submit it to us so we can verify it and get it on there. But just really use that as a resource to say, we're doing this to meet this best practice that is evidence-based. So one last thing before I dismiss you for lunch. Also on my website, we do once a month lunchtime hot topics. And we record those, and then after we present it, it's what date is it each month? First Wednesday, because I couldn't tell you whether it was the first Sunday or the first Wednesday. But when we do that, we record it and we link it so you can go back and play those if you missed it. But there's a lot of good information, Tammy.
So I just wanted to remind any of you that use Kansas Star, this spring we added a lot of other indicators of effective practice that align with the 4 redesign principles. And if you know about Kansas Star, all of those indicators have wise ways. That's like a miniature literature review, peer-reviewed, solid evidence, solid research. So you don't have to worry about trying to find some type of lit review to prove what you're doing. So if you're already using that tool, there's new indicators, look for them.
Awesome. Anything else? If you ask a question before lunch, you know what everybody's going to look at you. So think about your question, and we'll answer it after lunch. And lunch is served. It's a free-for-all. We're scheduled to come back at 12:45. If you're all back and ready to go at 12:37, we'll get going. All right, how about a round of applause for our commissioner and his selection of music? Thank you, thank you. All right, Beth, it's all yours.
Okay, I'm just going to do some short updates because we're going to save most of the CSAS time for post-secondary information from Kelly and Kyle this afternoon. So the first thing I want to do is talk about state assessments. The window's still open. Did you know that? We still have people working at the help desk. Did you know that you could call them? They might just like to chat with you. So that's a good thing. The commissioner asked me last Friday, is the window still open? I'm like, that's a good thing. Thank you for not calling him. We really appreciate it. So if you do have problems, Mary's here, I'm here. We will take care of any situations that you have. So it closes, the window closes next Friday on the 26th. Some things you need to know. Y'all doing an awesome job. We're 80% finished with the ELA assessment, so that's great. We're still sitting at about 50% on math, and what we know over the years is that you save math to the end so the kids can have as much instructional time in math as possible. So we know that, and then it's about 75% of the science is complete. So awesome. The score reports will come out a week after the window closes approximately, so that week of May 6th. So they need a whole week after the window closes. Then the following week, the reports will come out. So everyone will have the score reports to send home before the end of the year. Along with the individual student reports, you'll get the school, the building level report, and you'll have a district report. So you'll have a good idea of how the kids are performing before you leave. The AMOS, check your data. That's critical. We told you earlier when we put out all the information on the test dates and everything that the check your data window will be in July. We know that many of you don't have staff in July, but we also were told if you let us know far enough ahead, we can kind of switch out some days or something so the people that need to check the data can be available to do that. So one of the things you know, now that we've been through a whole cycle and our ESSA plan is in place, these assessment scores drive the ESSA decisions. And so it's critical for you to go in and make sure the kids, that all the demographic information on your kids are fine. If you see kids in subgroups that shouldn't be there or kids that should be in a subgroup that they're not, this is the time when you would want to fix that. If you have any issues with kids that have moved during the school year, and if the students counted in the appropriate building, things like that. That's what the check your windows for. And so you do want to make sure that you do that in July. The other thing about assessments, I'll let you know, is there's a survey out on the assessments this year. Lee put it out on the listserv yesterday. Mary said we've already got a lot of responses in, so forward that on to your teachers. And as many people as can respond to the survey, we would really appreciate it. So that's state assessments. ACT. So ACT is funded for the next 2 years. That's a good thing, right? And so some things that I've learned this year working with ACT that I just want to share with you. You've probably already figured it out too, but a state contract for ACT is not the same thing as a district contract for ACT, and it's not the same thing as if students just go take the test on Saturday. ACT runs those programs all different, and so with the state contract, the state results aren't available until the window, the last administration, closes. So we had not planned on having kids test on April 24th, but because of the snow day in February, we had to use the April 24th date. So that just means everything is delayed because of the April 24th testing date. So once all of the data is complete, then ACT will run all of, score everything and put together the data files that they'll be sending to you. So one question I have, and the same, so ACT and work keys the following day, right? So this is a question that I have that I'm just going to take by show of hands. The work keys paper reports that will come to your school are scheduled to be delivered the first week of July. And that, of course, has 4th of July in the first week of July. So ACT has offered to delay the delivery of those materials because that has to be signed for. It's going to come secure, right? And somebody in the district's going to have to sign for it. So they've offered to delay it to the first week of August. And I don't want to make that decision just me, but I will take a show of hands. How many would like them? It has to be statewide. I don't get to have you sign up for when you want your materials delivered. They're not quite that accommodating, but they will, delay it. So how many people would be okay with getting their materials the first week in August? Would you raise your hands? Okay. And how many people would prefer to have it delivered to your school the first week of July? I got someone to make a decision other than me. I got lots of people higher on the food chain than me here today. We'll make a decision. We'll try to do the best we can, and then we'll put out on the listserv what we're going to do. I know that first week in July is tough, but if you're going to have people in the district that can sign for it, we might. I hate to delay the information anymore. The other thing I know about work keys.
Put out any information on a time frame that it'll come or a day? Will they do anything of that, or do you just have to be there for the entire week, the first week of July?
I'll try to find out. I think however they've delivered your materials, that'll be how it's going to be delivered. It's my understanding. Because it'll come, I did ask if it was a signature required, because we didn't want it sitting somewhere. So it will come signature required. I'm assuming it comes to the building. And I'm assuming it probably, my understanding with this is that generally it comes to the counselor. Because they're the contact, the ACT. It could be that it's coming somewhere else, but I'll find some more specifics. And then when we make the decision, we'll put out on the listserv the information. And ACT will also put it on the Kansas page on their website that'll have the information for you. The certificates for work keys. So my understanding is for districts that have been doing it or individuals that have taken work keys on their own, but mostly districts have had contracts with ACT to deliver work keys. And then the kids that score high enough that are getting the certificates, that then you're able to go in and print those. Well, because it's a state administration, those certificates aren't going to be available until mid-June. So any of you that were wanting to use those certificates for graduation, you're not going to be able to print them off and have them available. And that's just a difference between the state contract and when they make that information available and what's available if you have other contractual agreements with ACT. So I think those are the important things. So the other thing that y'all probably want to know that we've put out on the listserv, but I'll just say it again, is that the ACT test date for paper pencil will be February 25th. And work keys will be February 26th. So ACT has promised that they're looking into compatibility with iPads, but I can't promise you if you decide to give them on iPads next year, because it will be, they're hoping to try it next year, that you might not have problems with it. I just don't know. I can't say that. But I've complained. I said our state assessments are available with iPads. I don't understand why ACT can't be that way. And they have been working with, trying to make it work, but they're not there yet. 5th, 25th, and 26th. Makeup dates, I don't think we put the makeup dates out, but we can do that. When I checked Lee's message, I didn't have it.
Just a credit to you guys, or whoever deserves the credit for this year with the dates. April 2nd was the makeup, and the 24th, because of state FBLA, that alleviated probably some phone calls in my district. So So thank you to you for working with ACT to do that.
Just to make sure I understand, it said that work keys can be administered next year to 11th and 12th. Are they?
So the policy is 11th grade ACT, 11th grade work keys. But students that don't have the opportunity to test in 11th grade, then we will allow 12th grade, but the process will be a little bit different next year. You'll have to come through Lee probably so we can authorize 12th grade, because this is an 11th grade, they're 11th grade tests. You wouldn't be, they had the opportunity to take the test, yeah. Sean, I'm just getting to it. I want to get through ACT and work keys, yeah. So any other ACT and work keys questions? Mm-hmm. My understanding is you're going to get both, paper and electronic. Yeah. So, okay, pre-ACT. So as I visited with ACT about the pre-ACT assessment and how a state contract works for that, their recommendation is that we have a window, because as you know, the pre-ACT is an assessment that's not as secure as ACT, so it doesn't have to be given just on one day. It is only a paper pencil assessment. They're going to pilot some online pre-ACT next year, but we would have to pay for the kids to do it twice, and I don't think we're going to do that, so we're not going to be part of the pilot. So everyone with the pre-ACT, it'll be a paper pencil test. With the pre-ACT, I'm sure you're all aware of this, but the kids keep their test booklets, and then when you get the results back, then the students can, or you can go work with them on areas. You can see what they got right and wrong and that type of thing. That's what I've been told. Okay, so given its useful, potentially helpful information to help kids prepare and make decisions as they move forward, it's at least from the conversations we've had at the agency, but I'm putting it out here for input from you before a final decision's made. We're thinking about a fall window, because if it's a fall window, then you can have all the information back and then work with the students in the spring. If we have a spring window and you don't get information until the end of the spring or even over the summer, not sure, it seems like it might be defeating the purpose for why we were wanting to use the assessment. So we're thinking about a fall window. Right now, ACT's recommending about 3 weeks for that window. So if you're looking at a 3-week window for 9th graders, and this is only 9th graders, it's not 10th grade, it's 9th grade. We give state assessments in 10th grade, okay? So 9th grade pre-ACT in the fall. Are you wanting, what's your preferred choice for a 3-week period? Late September, early October, just October, late October, early November. I think I have about 3 windows that might work, but I really don't know your school schedule when you're getting kids. I mean, they're freshmen, right? They're new to your high schools, and how you're settling them in and what you want to do. So, does anyone have a preference on a window?
Beth, how long between the test and results for the pre-ACT? That would help me determine when the best window, because if we could get to before parent-teacher conference in October, that's a wonderful plan time with our parents, but I don't know.
I don't think the results will be back that fast. I think you'll have to allow for it, because they're paper tests, right? You're going to send them in, get them scored. They're going to send you the materials back. I think we're going to have to allow about 6 weeks on that. 6 to 8 weeks, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you want October or if you want to go into November. Late September, early October doesn't really interfere with anything pop up on the school calendar that's a problem. I mean, all the conferences and everything with the April 2nd kind of threw us a little bit. We weren't really thinking that stuff kicked in quite so early. Yeah. Right. That's a question. If you have a PSAT date, is that something at the state, because that's not information the state would have, right, that we need to stay away from? Do they have a window? I mean, does every district pick that date they want to give it themselves, or does SAT gives you some certain days you have to give it on? I don't know. It would make it easier to have an overlap with the PSAT? October, it sounds like. Okay. Well, I'll work with ACT and get some dates on the pre-ACT out. So those are my... Is anyone in here using Aspire? Yeah. Do you know? I mean, and you give the Aspire to what grade? 8, 9, and 10. Yeah. And you do 5 through 10. I know that Arkansas is using Aspire for their state assessments. And so they do 3 through 8 Aspire, and then they have it available 9, 10 for more or less what the pre-ACT is. So the pre-ACT is going to have the, and I'm using this very loosely, but the career inventory that goes along with it, where they're going to ask all the questions to the students that you will get information back. And that's one of the things that they'll be providing, ACT will be providing some professional development on, is how to use this information to help. So I think it's going to be that inventory that the student takes, and then the results that they're able to put together to help you when you're working with the student's IPS, to help guide them in the direction they might be interested in or what's lacking. I don't believe Aspire has that. I think Aspire is more the straight, but maybe, I don't know. Do they have the inventory and everything with the Aspire test in high school? That goes along with the pre-ACT. Yeah, I think that's probably the difference. And of course they're going to tell you everything is aligned, but the Aspire is has its own framework. Sure. I mean, we'll be able to do the same data work and do it predictive with the state assessment too. So that part of it I don't think is the critical piece. I mean, I think if you've been using it all the way along, it's useful for your purpose, but I think it's the same set of questions aligned to the framework that they've been measuring all the way along that you would keep through that, where the ACT is its own. I mean, they're going to try to align everything, but yeah. But whether you need both of them or not, after the first year, I think you'll know for sure, but yeah. But the whole idea behind the pre-ACT is to save districts money so you don't have to go out and look for something to fill that gap, because we have realized that there is a gap and that we'll be able to do it. The other thing I should probably circle back on ACT and let you know that with the pre-ACT, this means that we will not be offering writing with the ACT, because a year ago when we had just started into this contract with ACT, we had talked about making writing optional. And then ACT had some parameters around it that made that so it wouldn't work because it had to be the whole school, not the individual student. But ACT was working to change that policy. But what I've heard from when I took it to the CAC, there really wasn't a lot of interest in that writing. Kids that want writing or probably have a very specific reason for wanting to take that part of the assessment, and the Saturday option is probably okay for them. So we won't be making writing an option with the ACT. So it'll be just what you gave this year, and then we'll add the pre-ACT in place of doing the writing. So we thought that would meet the needs of more students that way. So other questions on pre-ACT, I don't know very much because it just got signed by the governor a week ago. So we're just starting into conversation with ACT right now on that. ACT and Work Keys, will be a continuing contract for that like we did this year. Okay, so we have a brief standards update. Nicole Prim is here, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about what she's doing with the English learners and the standards and the assessment that's coming. And then after that, we'll turn it over to post-secondary.
Hello, everybody. I am Nicole Prim. Yes, I am the new English learner consultant at the state level. So in an effort to be intentional and effective in my new role, I'm going to be sending out a survey to all of your district coordinators, ESOL directors, in order to get a little bit of a sense what you guys are needing. Because in this role, there's a lot of different needs. And I want to make sure that I can help you the best way possible. Okay, and so look in the next couple of days, I'm going to be sending out a survey. All right, it's going to be called a need sensing survey, and it has lots of questions, but it's also going to be asking some data questions as well. So you're going to need to have access to your building report card so that you can be able to fill in this information about ELs and non-ELs as well. Okay, but this would also help me kind of get a better sense too of things and where we stand as a state. Okay, so look forward to that, please. All right. Any questions from me? Hopefully, guys, you have been receiving my newsletters if you're on that listserv, and all of those updates from myself and Julie, hopefully. Yeah. All right. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay, we're going to finish out the day with post-secondary success.
All right, I'm going to give you a fair warning that I might end up on this stage eventually because I like to point at all my stuff while I talk. And I feel like I'm kind of going to point into the abyss here, but as soon as Teresa gets us rolling. Kyle rolls into these presentations and you know he's just there. He's good. Nothing. He just got it. I overpack. I got a blender in this bag right here. As a matter of fact, 2 pairs of socks, toothbrush, couple of books. So we come prepared for lodging. We usually do a 2-hour presentation. We'll be respectful of time. We'll push this down to about 50 minutes or so, but the key to this presentation today is not marching through the slides. It's making sure we try our best to answer specific questions that you have. If you walk out and you didn't get a chance to go, hey man, what about X? And we didn't address that, then we didn't do well. If that means we didn't make it to slide 4, that's okay. So please feel free to ask questions at any point. We're going to do a little bit of the background, the technical component of it, and then we're going to also try to get it into some application as it relates to being a curriculum leader to make it a little bit contextual. So we'll do that. We've never done the one microphone dance. Can you hear him back there? Brandon, can you hear him? What about me when I talk like that? Really? All right. Well, pardon? I can't. Yeah, right. So we'll proceed accordingly. Take it away.
All right, so just a quick show of hands. Does everyone in here, we're familiar with the idea of our post-secondary success rate and our post-secondary effective rate? Everyone have a chance to at least check it out a little bit? Maybe people might have heard me talk about this about 10 times now. This whole idea is based on a study from the University of Georgetown, and we're looking at the year 2020, what kind of education post-secondary is necessary for our job market. We've left this in here. We always kind of just like to start with it. But what it boils down to is by 2020, 70 to 75-ish percent of job engineers are going to require something after high school diploma. What that is, the breakdown you see here, but that's what we're moving to, and that's what our metric is based on. That's. Oh, look at that. Has anybody seen Bumping Mics on Netflix? So, all right, anyway. So, no. I hope someone has. If not, that was a very respectful laugh, and I appreciate that. Or an uncomfortable laugh. I don't know, one or the other. All right, so.
This is a presentation of information that it's a really good introduction into the whole understanding and of what is meant by the post-secondary success and effectiveness measure. We get information from the National Student Clearinghouse, right? And with that information, then we add information and then provide reports for you. But this particular piece of information then is actually within the National Student Clearinghouse suite of reports that you all have access to if you're in AMOS. You all have, right? You're all in that, right? Have you all had a chance to look at the NSC stuff? Have you all, anybody not seen this stuff? Anybody not seen this stuff? Keep in mind that the whole cycle talks about this National Student Clearinghouse data is really dependent upon how clean is the graduation data that we get from you on the DGSR, right? If there's something that's not right there, it's going to really mess up then what we send to NSC and then therefore what we get back and what we can work with. So that's the first kind of link in the chain, if you will, in terms of data accuracy. We don't have time today to tell you some stories about like, oops, this one particular district, the names were flipped and what that did to their numbers and stuff like that. But we were clean that up. But you know, the cleanliness of that DGSR, then that's what we send to NSC. And then, of course, they turn around and then start producing reports like this. When we go out and work with districts, oftentimes they haven't seen these reports and they don't know what to do with them. One of the things we like to say with this particular report here is, and Kyle can't touch it, so it'll be interesting to see what he does here during these few minutes, is this is a handy way. It's not a complete way. It's not as complete as some of the other reports we're going to give you, but this is a really handy way if you had to do a quick summation with your co-members, your team, and go, what's happening to the kids that leave us in terms of their enrollment in tech 2- and 4-year institutions. This is a beautiful way to kind of grab that real quick and use that in a conversation, knowing full well that it's not complete. So, you know, again, for this particular example here, the class of 2011, what happens then? You know, Kyle, is it 50% on this?
Yeah, so their first year out of high school, 50% of this district students ended up enrolled in some sort of post-secondary institution, which some quick math says 50% didn't. What on this report, and I would point out that this is part of about a 50-page PDF, and so this report's following one class through time. There's other reports that show how your classes compare to each other, first year out of high school enrollment, all sorts of things. But in this one, we're looking at all the way up to the last year of data we have, which is 17-18, what happened. So when we look at that first year, pretty simple. 50% of their kids went to college. NSC calls it new to college. 50% were not found in the National Student Clearinghouse data. In the second year, I think it's maroon, down towards the bottom, tells us that 9.1% of our kids have already graduated. That's an important number to keep in mind when I'm talking about this, because when we get into our KSDE generated reports, we consider those kids a post-secondary success. They've met one of our criteria. The big orange bar above that, NSC calls it persisted. That means they came back for a second year. Again, important for our KSDE reports because that's another criteria that means that student met our success. They're going to be included in the metric. At the top, you can see that still 50% of their kids are not found in the NSC data. And the yellow is they're no longer enrolled and they did not graduate.
Now, a real quick analysis of this, of course, then is, we really focus on the first 2 years out, but as curriculum leaders, this is a handy metric then to kind of start looking further down the road what happens with your students. What is the likelihood that they're going to persist, earn something for the investment and the money that they put out to go to college? Even though this is a sidebar from our metric, and I get that, but it's interesting, the blue, and you can't very well make that out in this example of the second column, but that's an interesting set of data, and that's a student that graduated from your school, stopped out the first year, but then went the year after that, right? Now, they're not going to make it into our metric. I get that, and we always get this question, right? It's 2 consecutive years of enrollment. We always get that question. They're not going to be in the metric, but you all know stories about students then when that was the right thing for them, right? There was no way they were going to leave your school and go right into Tech 2 or 4 because it wasn't the right thing for multiple reasons. We could all list those reasons, right? Everything from horrendous things to wild things, like that happens, but that kind of gets picked up there. That's just like the blue over there that returned after a stop out. Maybe that was the right thing. We're not insensitive to that. It just isn't how our metric is set up. And those are the hard edges around our metric.
Yeah, and we always try to draw a distinction between a successful person and a student who's met the post-secondary success criteria. We're pretty open that we're both unsuccessful people.
It's actually quite apparent, actually.
Burlingame High School is never going to get credit for me as a success. I didn't do this after high school. It took me a few years to go.
Yep.
Kelly hiked the Appalachian Trail, which I consider very successful, but he took a year before he went.
My feet still, hurt. But
yeah. So we have a well-defined metric, and that's what we're going to get further into. Right. But we always like to draw the distinction between post-secondary success and just success. The adjective is important in this.
Right.
The last thing I want to say about this is I feel like this report is more helpful to you than to us. We can look at the first 2 years and we'll talk about our metric, but if I'm an educator, if I know these students, what did they do in 6 years or 7 years? How many of my students, the maroon number at the end, I think is the key. Mm-hmm. How many of my students graduated and did something by then? Because even if they didn't go that first year and they're not in my metric, if they ended up in the maroon eventually, see, look, I'm pointing in there, but I feel like it. If they end up in the maroon eventually, then I feel like I did my job. I feel like that's a good thing.
Again, this is a common question we get when we go out. But in your reports, you're going to get this in that NSC basic reports. You're going to get this notion, this report that's going to tell you the institution. No, this isn't.
No, and you jumped one ahead of me. I'll talk about this one.
Yeah.
So what this is showing is another common question we get is how many students are you catching? Because everyone has a story of there's a student that was at my Thanksgiving dinner that I know is enrolled in college. Why aren't they showing up on my reports? And we'll get into some of those reasons. But this shows that overall in Kansas, NSC has. They call it catchment, is 99% of the enrollment. So they are very high. And actually, over the last couple of years, it started with the commissioner. He was out when him and Brad were on their tour, and they were talking to the institutions, asking for help. Submit this data. It means a lot to us. And now currently, we have, I think, almost every institution in Kansas is participating, and we're working with them on their data so that any holes we do have will be addressed, and that we have hopefully less of those questions of, I have a bunch of students that went to X, college, why aren't they showing up? And so hopefully that's something that we won't have to deal with as much in the future, and we can focus more on the students that actually are there as opposed to the ones that we're missing.
But there has been a concerted effort to address that, and like Kyle mentioned, it's come from the commissioner and the deputy commissioner. It's also come from districts like your own who have said, have contacted the agency and said, could you please help us advocate for X or Y and that sort of thing. And then Kyle's been working also to try to increase those enrollment percentages. But just from this chart, you can see the increase from 2003 to the present. in terms of the type of enrollment catchment that there is. Public's really high, and even within the private schools, the increase is quite noticeable. So there's greater participation in this, and that really helps us have greater confidence and accuracy and usage, if you will, of the data. So we like to put that up there to address that question because it comes up quite a bit.
Okay, now, what you're ready for. Got it?
This one. This is another common question that comes up. This one is in the basic reports.
This one is in the
This
basic.
is in your basic report, and it'll be unique to your district, to your district, to your district. What this does then is this for forever, like probably going back to 2010, is that right?
Yes.
All the institutions, the Tech 2 and 4 years that participate in NSC, this is the summation then of where those students have gone for you, all right? This is an example. Well, we cleaned that out, but we were at a district not too long ago. This was where their students went, okay? This is where their students went. And one of the things, and let's kind of then, let's start break this down.
Yeah, this is where we get into application when we work with, directly with districts.
So if this is like so obvious that it's laughable, go ahead and laugh. But if I'm a curriculum, thank you in the back. If I'm a curriculum coordinator, it's a tough crowd.
It is.
It's a tough room. I'm going to do this. If I'm a curriculum coordinator, thank you in the front. If I'm a curriculum coordinator, I want to look at this, and I might be asking myself questions about if I know that 70% of my students are going to institution X or Y, what do I know about the coursework that they're getting ready to go into? How well do I understand the math, reading, writing, and English requirements that's going to happen if most of my kids are going to Hutch or the University of Kansas in this example, right? So there's opportunities there for you as curriculum coordinators to think about your curriculum not only as it relates then to Kansas successful high school graduate, but also then what happens to that graduate afterwards, and they go into these institutions. There are examples then of where community colleges and then districts then have synced up then their math requirements, right? So that what happens in high school math then is there's a natural bridge between that then and what happens then at the community college. That kind of conversation and application of this data is available for you. You can be doing that. There's great examples of that in the Austin, Texas school district and up in Sioux Falls, Iowa, where there's a great partnership between the community colleges and the main feeder districts then into their institutions, all right? So that's, as a curriculum coordinator, you might want to start thinking about that in terms of how are you approaching what is a successful high school student and how many opportunities are you availing then for these students then to make the transition into institutions that they're going to. How well are they doing? You take a look at that and then you look at them, well, what is the one-year drop, the non-persistent rate? Were they prepared to stay, right? Those types of questions you can be asking yourself.
Yeah, and when we talk about barriers for persistence, one of the things is we talk about what are the requirements, and when we're working with this district, we ask them, what ACT score does Hutchinson require to avoid taking remedial classes? I'm sure you guys know, but every community college, they have their own. There's a very big range. Right. And so it's important for this local district, if 80% of my kids are going to Hutchinson, I need to know something about their math department. When I'm speaking with my students, when I'm helping them plan, what kind of ACT score do we need to be talking about so that we know they're avoiding remediation? Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting range.
It's a big range.
One of our colleagues, our math consultant, then I think it's 18 to 25. We'll put you in a different slot in terms of either going into college algebra or not, or developmental. So you think about that in terms of how you utilize the ACT now with the ACT for all option, but also in terms of if most of my kids are going to this and they're looking at a 21 or a 22 in terms of they're either going to be routed into developmental math or not, you might want to think about that in terms of what kind of opportunities are we providing. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
All right, this is another report. It's in the 50-page PDF document that you can find in AMOS. And what this one shows, it's more of a breakdown of not only did my kids go on to post-secondary, but did they go to a 2-year or a 4-year. We throw this up just because to point out that when you get into the NSC data, you're going to find it's broken down in a lot of different ways. It's not just our KSDE metric of looking at 2 years post-secondary. This report looks at the first semester after high school graduation. So it's important to make the distinction on what am I looking at, and especially if I have questions about what's my success rate, what's my effective rate, how does this influence it. The time out of college is an important thing to think about when you're looking at those.
Again, these are handy if you explain to the audience that they're not going to be complete. They're right, there's a little bit of incompleteness here. But they're handy to have if you're put in a position where you need to talk to some stakeholders about, well, what is happening in terms of life after school as it relates to enrollment. These are really handy to have, and they're there for you within that 50-page basic report set of reports there.
Oh, and we dropped a couple slides for time's sake, so I'll throw in right now. A key thing to remember is that the numbers on this report are most likely never going to exactly match what we report at KSDE. For one reason, is because currently we add in high school certifications. So your success rate is including that criteria. The second thing is we have students are allowed to opt out through FERPA from NSC, and so that data is not included in our reports. There's a very small percentage of if a name doesn't match or NSC can't locate the student, that they may be in their reports but not in ours. It'll give you a very good idea, but like Kelly said, it's important to take it with just a small grain of salt that this may not be the full picture in these reports. The fun one.
You all have, let me rephrase this question. Have you all been pulled into a conversation at your district yet about this report? Have any of you all been in?
Lots of heads.
Yeah. And is there anything that we can help you with in terms of how that conversation has gone, or questions that came up? Because we can march through this real quick and explain something, but did anything come up where you go, gee, I don't know, or what's that, or what is that? Yes, sir. Is the Truman Challenge, right? Plain speaking. That's what you've thrown down in front of, right? You've thrown down the Harry Truman Challenge. Kyle?
Well, guess we're not getting out of here at 2.
Right.
No, just kidding.
Who's more plain speaking today, you or me?
You take the first stab and then I'll clarify.
All right.
I'm sorry, I was going to go first, but I wanted to say that.
Yeah, okay, that's all right. All right, here we go. What do we know about our students when they leave our school as it relates to enrollment in higher education? What do we know? I would pose it in a passive form as a question. That's as plain as I can be. I would pose it as that question. What do we know? Because this begins to tell us a little bit about what we know. Now, if the person's still with me, then we can add 2 or 3 more sentences. But I would respectfully say, well, what do we know? Because without this, let me pose a question back to you, and you can speak quite elaborately if you want. If someone were to ask you in your community, what do we know about when the students leave McPherson, right? What do we know? How do you answer that? Plainly.
What I want to be able to communicate is when you look at that, it's easy to describe the yellow bar.
Yep. Got that one.
That's your graduates. Yep.
When I start talking about the red,
what happens?
I start to lose a few people because I tell them based off of success and how we define that.
Yes.
Is who would then fall into that. It's when you start relating it back to that initial cohort.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes where we're all
Yeah.
So one way I would look at that is when we say cohort, we all know our 9th grade cohort, right? We have a 4-year cohort and a 5-year. I would almost break that down into, of all the students that enter my high school or my high schools in 9th grade, when they leave our high schools, how many of them met these criteria within 2 years? And I think that is the simplest way. And then you can get into all the nuance of, you know, this isn't there, this is there, that. But that would be the sentence that I would use, is I'm looking at every student that enters my high schools in 9th grade and what they do 2 years out of when they left my high school. I think that's where I would start with that.
His or mine? His? Good job, Kyle.
Now, I'll jump on your question, though, because a similar question that we get asked a lot is on the predicted effectiveness rate. People say, how the heck do I explain that? And I think learning to explain that is a very important and helpful thing, because one thing I'll say is when we look at these effective rates, everyone who's used to 100 point, you know, a 90% is an A. If you're at, in this example, I can't read up there, they're at 33, I believe. And that 33, like, ooh, bad, bad, bad. When I look at their predicted effectiveness rate, it's 31 to 35, and they're performing exactly where we expected they would be. So learning to explain that, I feel like, will help you take this conversation to where people understand what's going on and they're willing to accept this. And the way I would explain that is we looked at the actual conditions within our school, and we call it risk. You know, cumulative poverty, suspension, expulsion, chronic absenteeism, and I'm going to test you. What's the fourth? Student mobility. When we see large concentrations of these things, students don't tend, it lowers our post-secondary success rate. And so all the predicted effectiveness rate is doing is taking that into account and saying, based on your concentration of those risk factors, where would we expect you to be? And in this case, we see that they are, although we think, you know, that shock, ooh, 33 bad, no, they're right where we expect them to perform. Now, of course, we want to improve that. We'd love to be way above it, but that's 33 is not a failure by any means. And that's the second part of that conversation, that I think the better we can explain it, and then hopefully better you can explain it, that it'll go over a
lot better. Right. The other thing is we've come up with a hand signal for this too. And it goes something like this. I can't do it, so. Right? So that's another way you can communicate to your community is this, right? Right?
You should probably explain it.
We're just,
right now,
we're just here.
Would you explain it?
No, I'm leaving it that one right now. We're just trying to help the field here. But obviously then the higher the risk, if this was, see your y-axis risk is really high, and the x-axis then is your risk factors, right?
Your y-axis has to be your performance.
Right? It's this. So high this, low this, right? Low, bring this down, this gets bigger. Right? So just stand in front of a public, your parent group and just start doing this. And then walk out.
That's actually our exit activity. We're all going to work on that together.
Get the heck out of there. Yes, sir.
For me, this graph is almost, it says what KEIS is all about. So that top right-hand corner with that number code and the numbers is confusing, because you just have your titles but no explanation of what they mean. So my suggestion is great graph, but the number and the title, if there is some explanation on that same page.
Yes.
Because even my staff, if we're not talking about this every day, we forget how you're coming up with each of those. And
could you, and thank you, we always struggle with incompleteness, and much of that falls on me. The incompleteness is mainly because of me. But could you circle back to the connection that you made between this and the conversation about KEISA real quick? Could you circle back to that opening thought, please?
Student that meets our 5 requirements, and we want them to be successful in Kansas. We're tracking them for 5 years here. So this is, in essence, a summary data of what we're all working for. I don't know if I'm off base, or you guys can correct me because I'm retiring, so it doesn't really matter anymore. But this graph is hard for me to explain to people because I have to go look up.
Yeah, and I think that's worse on our side because all that exists. So it should be here. I don't like to hear that because we've written it and it exists. So it's good feedback, and we appreciate that.
I do want to clarify one thing, though. All right. First of all, thank you, and I'm glad, and I think I have some colleagues in the room that will be pleased to hear of the lean into this, and then the connection with KSDE and letting that inform that conversation and vice versa. But keep in mind, this is not tracking. This is not a following a cohort for 5. These are actually 5 separate cohorts in this particular one. I just want to make sure that's clear, because if that's part of the conversation with your group, that's erroneous. Okay, these are 5 distinct cohorts. Okay, it is. Yeah.
Well, and when we say it's 5 distinct cohorts, it's 5 distinct years of students followed for 2 years out of. So it's. When you start talking about it out loud, it gets a little ridiculous sometimes.
Also, and again, and we don't show it in this particular slide, but as you all know, on this, when you go into this, there is a district comparison tool that you can go in and you can select either by enrollment or by the risk factors that Kyle talked about earlier, where you can start matching up then your district to someone that's really quite comparable. We were out, it was a month ago, to a district out, and we were looking at 5 districts that were really quite similar to them in terms of cumulative poverty, mobility, absenteeism, and that sort of thing, and their predictive rate. And they fell right in the middle of the 5. 2 of them seem their numbers, if you will, were really significantly, not just a little bit, significantly higher. And a couple of them were, believe it or not, significantly lower. That was a really rich conversation to have right there. We kind of stopped our presentation and we kind of just moved over to that, and that was really good. But that tool is available to you also.
That's on the report card.
That's on the
report card. Just to clarify,
yes.
The comparison's on the report card.
Go ahead, yes. Yes, of course.
Yes. It's under board goals, I believe, and it's called the post-secondary comparison tool.
Yeah, you can go into the public site right now. That's not on AMOS or anything like that. And you can sort by enrollment only. I think it's more interesting.
Yeah, it's on the building report card.
I think the risk factors gives you a better look.
Yeah. If you choose by risk factors, you'll get the 30 schools closest, the 15 that are higher and the 15 are lower than you. If you choose by size, you'll get the same thing, so you get a list of 30. And if you click both, for most people, unless you're at 1, Wichita won't have as many, but you'll get 4 or 5 that are approximately your size and have the same concentration of risk as you do. And that's the 4 or 5 we like to really, if we're working with someone, that's what we look at. And we start to say, if they are way higher, what do they have? What can we learn from here? Or if someone's way lower, what could you offer them? What are you doing different?
One thing I want to maybe get your input on, and this would probably be for the districts that have more than one high school. But right now, when you go out to the building report card, that's where you find this, but it's only for the district.
Right.
If you have multiple high schools, we also do this for every high school, but that's in authenticated applications. We don't post high schools publicly, and the only reason is you guys are so dadgum competitive, even within your own. The first phone calls I got was from districts that had multiple high schools. Well, I want to know if I'm beating the ones north of the track, and go into authentication. But we would want your input. We could do individual. If you have one high school, your high school is the same as your district. But if you had, like Shawnee mentioned, if you guys would want out there individual high schools, we could. We just chose not to because of the competitive nature. They can go look in authentications.
When I go into AMOS and do that, will I get an effectiveness rate for that high school?
No.
I will not, right?
But your effectiveness rate for the high school is the same as your district because you only have one high school. We can't do that, so that's a good question.
Okay. Well, my reason for asking is we have a virtual charter school in our district.
Yeah.
So so there is an impact that is not our community of kids. That's been the biggest challenge I've had to talk to my community about this, because there's kids impacted in that overall data there that are not relatable to the community.
Can I pawn your question? I'm going to put it back on you, because the answer is right now no, and that's something that for Brad to talk about and think about. But there is something you can do using this to talk about that with someone.
So let me to finish. The reason we don't do an effective rate for a high school is the insides get so small because when you're looking at chronic absentee, cumulative poverty, and most school districts in the state don't have large enough subgroups, we can't do a predictable risk or predictive rate at a building level.
Yep. It's not run that way.
I'm dealing with a fairly small subgroup at my virtual charter school, let's say 15 to 20 maximum seniors potentially out of a class. How much impact will that have on that effective 95% confidence? Is it going to move it that much, or am I looking at
What size is the?
How big is your overall?
Yeah, how big is the?
We're talking 85 kids total out of a cohort.
It's going to be.
So that's why I'm struggling with.
Here's the thing that we struggle with, that you struggle with. If you're a standalone virtual school, we got a pretty good idea if they're a virtual kid. If you got a virtual program, and you turn that kid in as one of your kids, we don't know if that kid's not the point guard or the president of the student council or lives 500 miles away. All we know is they're your kid.
Yep.
So yes, they are. And if you have 15 out of it and then 85, depends on how they do. But right now, when we look at just virtual, their graduation rates are way down here, and their effective rates are, and so they will have a.
So what I would say for you, and this is, taking it off us, I'm assigning you work. But if you were going to talk about this, this is also an AMOS, the complete student post-secondary file, and it's got a column in here that says success criteria met, true or false. Now, as Brad said, if you have a virtual program, we may not have any idea who those kids are, but you know which ones are in your virtual program. And so you could manually, just using true and false, you can calculate the success rate. Pull those 15 out, look at it for them, and then look at what's left. And I think...
I appreciate that, but I do want to point out that there are people in the community that use this data. I've got realtors calling. I've got business people that are looking at my data and saying, what the heck is going on? You're not reflecting well. And I have to have this conversation constantly that says that's not a true reflection of our community. And I'm frustrated by that conversation happening all the time.
Yeah, and you're not the first person to say that. I mean, I kind of had this little thing prepared because we were working with another district that had a virtual program. And so we were kind of talking about options for how they could talk about it. So we do appreciate that.
The virtual program, we had the conversation about maybe having a building code to track that data separately. Now, I also know, like Brad said, those virtual schools graduation rate, then you may end up on the list if you're not meeting 67. But it would clean up your high school data.
It would clean up some of it, but if you talk the effective rate, then they would still be in your district, so it would not clean up. But but there are some options for trying to parse it out.
And this all gets rolled up at the district. You know what I mean? So, and the calculation. This thing runs off the district calculation, so it
you would have separate NSC basic reports, and yes,
that's right. Yep.
Last thing, if you go into AMOS, I think your high school will have a different effective rate than your district because of their building number.
If the virtual
school has its own. But if that virtual program is a program underneath the high school, then we can't glean it out.
We have different building codes, but I think in AMOS, I've never seen an effective rate just for my high school. Maybe I'm not looking at the right.
You're right. We don't have an effective rate at a building level. I'll give you an example. Spring Hill, they have a virtual school. So if you look at their district report card, their district effective rate is down. If you go into AMOS and look at the Spring Hill High School, it's way up. It doesn't have a predictive rate because we can't do one with that small, but they have a much different. So I would look at that because I bet you your data is a lot higher at the building. We just don't have an effective rate at the building because most
Hey, Kelly, it's 1:40. It's 1:40. Oh. All right. I jumped forward to this one to talk about it, but just to anybody else have anything on this one before we?
So if you have a student that doesn't do anything the first 2 years, but then goes to technical college after that, how would that change the data when they go get it?
It would not change your data on the KSDE reports we're talking about here. If we go all the way back to the NSC reports in the beginning, they will show up as soon as they show up at that institution.
Yeah, you know, not that you've got better. If you go into the NSC thing, there is a complete student. Go back to that. We produce that. This is KSDE produces, and what we try to do here is this. Let's just condense this down so that it's just your kids for 1 year in terms of what we use to make the calculation. If you go into NSC, it's going to have the complete higher ed history of every student that graduated from your institution.
And that file is also available to you in AMOS.
It'll track them all the way to a doc program. So that your example in that, it's going to show up. So if you wanted to start then cranking out, you know, a different storyline about, yeah, well, that's only a 2-year calculation. You should see our 5-year calculation. You know, like, look how many doctorates we have, for crying out loud. That's all there, and it's just immense. So we try to clean this up just to give you a fighting chance of looking at, this is what we're using the calculation on, right? So,
all right. So, and we kind of touched on this. This is available also in AMOS. This tells you not only if a student met our success criteria, but the last 3 columns tell you how, whether they were a graduate, whether they were retained for 2 years, or whether they got some sort of high school certificate or credential that currently is being used in the calculation. All right, now the fun part, Kelly.
All right, so as curriculum coordinators and curriculum leaders, all of this data, I mean, we can really get wrapped around the axle on that data and the calculation and specifics about rules and business rules and who is not included, that sort of thing. But at a certain point, the real work then is using this to stimulate questions about what is happening in your district, right? What is going on? What questions can be driven from this beyond the legalistic, if you will? All right, the legalistic. How do we use this as curriculum leaders then to inform and improve instruction, right? And is that instruction geared toward a successful Kansas high school graduate, right? Because hopefully that's kind of what we're doing. These are just examples. We purposely violated the rule of PowerPoint to just put up a bunch of questions that can be driven from this, not only from the NSC stuff, but then from the KSDE stuff. Look, you know, is the high school graduation, is that an acceptable graduation rate? You know, that's a fundamental question, right? What districts are similar? What happens to 7th and 8th graders who aren't making gains? How do we support the successful transition, not only from high school to college, but how do we support the transition from junior high to high school? We'll talk a little bit about that here in a couple of minutes here, but that's a huge part of, quote, post-secondary readiness is that transition. That transition. So I would challenge you to, like, when you're done asking us questions that we're responsible for and we have to answer and we have to clarify and we have to correct mistakes, once you're done with that, then you need to start asking great questions amongst yourself as education people. How are we using this data to move forward? So these are just there for effect. All right? What else we got?
That's what you just said.
Right. So this is just an example then of what we would call then a diagnostic process, wherein you can use the data that's available to you to start, if you will, how do you then construct a conversation from this data to start asking yourself questions about the system in terms of what it's doing or not doing for your students, all right? So for instance, the metric, if you will, that bar chart that showed effectiveness and success, that's after the fact. If the conversation begins and ends there, that's not the point. That thing is there to work backwards with through all this other data, right? We need to utilize that NSC data and your local data to kind of back map what happened to your kids for them to end up at their point. Whether it's a successful point, you might want to back map it to start figuring out why is it that these kids went on and were okay in this transition. What was it about these kids then it wasn't, all right? This is just an example then of how then you can use that data then, a flow chart then of how do we do that. Who in the district is being served well by what we call post-secondary readiness and who isn't. And I think the second part of that question is really important because I think we're at a point because of graduation rates being relatively high. It's like, well, who isn't the system working well for, right? And therefore their opportunities to move on are being pinched or limited with barriers. Those are the types of questions that we need to ask. All right. Obvious question that comes from this, this board charge, if you will, this board, State Board of Education definition of a successful college or high school graduate. What opportunities exist in your district for students to cultivate the skills needed for higher level coursework and workplace expectations? I don't know you all well enough to know how you all are talking about that. I don't know you, but hopefully you're asking yourself that, right? And that's part of the conversation. What opportunities are there for students to cultivate those skills for workplace expectations and higher level types of expectations that come in a post-secondary setting to fulfill that type of criteria for more and more students? What else we got?
I was going to throw this out there. Kelly said we weren't going to have time for this, so I'm skipping to it. But one thing, he knows I love it. One thing I would encourage you to look at, I'm all talking and I'm on the wrong slide. This is my favorite chart, not that last one. When we talk about post-secondary success, a big part of it is removing barriers to get into post-secondary. And I'll be quick here, but what this chart shows is in 2009, these students as freshmen, they had an aspiration that they were going to get a 4-year degree. And all the little dots represent whether I have high socioeconomic status and high scores or low and low or low and high. And so we see everyone, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of where their scores are, and everyone says, I'm getting a 4-year degree. By the time we're juniors, it starts to filter out. The better my achievement, or this uses math scores, the better my math scores are and the higher my socioeconomic status, I'm still more likely to say I'm still going to do that. But the interesting one here is who actually enrolls in a bachelor's program. And if you look here, on the very end, students that have the lowest math scores but the highest socioeconomic status are more likely to enroll in post-secondary than the students that have the highest math scores but the lowest socioeconomic status. So that's the kind of barriers that we're talking about removing. I'm looking at my post-secondary and my effectiveness rate. I got to think, what students do I have that could be successful in post-secondary, and what barriers are there that are keeping them from getting there in the first place and having that opportunity?
Just real quick here, think about just something as straightforward as what Beth talked about earlier with that is ACT for all. Just think about that just for a minute, all right? That's a great thing. There's a great new body of work that just came out, that's been out, about states that have initiated ACT for all. And what kind of results are they finding from that, right? So in states like Michigan, Connecticut, Massachusetts, where they've instituted this, lo and behold, what are they finding? Exactly what you would think. And that is you get high ability kids that come from low SES. And a whole new world of possibility opened up for them, not because of necessarily the financial barrier, which again, that could be an impediment too, the cost of ACT, right? But it was the results. In other words, fully capable kids that all of a sudden have a new world of opportunity available to them that they thought wasn't there. Because they got the results back and they were like going, holy, I didn't think I had a brain in my head. Or I didn't think I had the kind of score to get into that kind of school. That's the kind of stuff that you all are doing right now, right? So you're trying to make that available, and that ACT for all is a small tool, but it's a beautiful tool that addresses exactly what Kyle was talking about, that whole notion then of when does aspiration then start to decline because of messages or lack of opportunities. Something as simple as ACT for all can change the trajectory for that, a high ability kid, but maybe from low SES who just thought that they just didn't have it. Those are simple things, but we start stacking up a whole bunch of simple things, and we change that trajectory for a lot of kids. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And it's backed by a really nice body of work. MIT was the last body of research that looked at that in terms of the effect in Michigan. The other thing, too, that comes from that is you will see slight bumps then in actual enrollment, too. You'll see that. More kids will enroll in Tech 2 and 4 because of that. That's down the road. That's the kind of investment we're making.
You want to end on that one since you want to talk about it?
Yeah. We're gonna probably try to end right here. We got a bunch more, but we'll leave it. This is nothing more than this is just one person's visualization then of what. I don't know how you folks are conceptualizing post-secondary readiness. I don't know. I don't know. But the degree to which you have or haven't, I would challenge you then to do that. And how are you guys conceptualizing the curriculum that exists in your district as it strengthens and adds to the whole post-secondary readiness? This is just one example of how you can kind of think about it. And look underneath it, then we put this whole notion then of IPS underneath this whole thing. How does the role of the IPS play then in our post-secondary readiness? Is that an active player and an expectation in terms of what we're seeing for student success after they leave our institutions? Kyle talked a little bit about this whole notion in the middle about the difference between being a high school freshman versus a senior, and that gap that falls from aspiration into enrollment. What are the reasons for that happening? There's another beautiful thing, study that we usually work with called the forgotten middle. And this all gets into this whole notion then of plateauing in the middle school years, 7th and 8th. That's usually a pretty strong indicator then of a student then that goes on into high school, then it probably stays flat then too, and then that decreases the likelihood of them going on to Tech 2 and 4. So that whole notion then of like, to what degree are we looking then at growth in the middle schools in terms of academic progress as it relates to then setting them to be on track then for success in high school and beyond that. So it isn't just a high school phenomena in your district. So let's go back to the graphic real quick. I also don't know how you all think about the other skills it takes to successfully go on to Tech 2 and 4 year, or actually to perform well in the modern workplace. And whatever model you want to think about that, but there's a whole series of complex skills. Look, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to, are there any first generation college educated people in the, I am, I'm the first kid off the farm. You know, you don't have to look any further than that, a first generation college kid, than how problematic it is to kind of get through that process to enroll in Tech or 2, right? Those are not things that need to be forgotten. Those are difficult things for kids. So what kind of philosophy or model does your district have that starts to address that? And I think one of the most important things to kind of leave you with as you look at this data and you think about post-secondary readiness is what kind of opportunities are you allowing your students to interact with sophisticated workplace demand types of opportunities, right? Sophisticated high-level thinking skills that are going to be required of them when they get into post-secondary life. What kind of opportunities do we have? Can that be part of your backward, when you do your analysis, can you look back and go, well, you know what, we don't really give our kids a chance to do sustained projects or sustained writing, right? Or how to follow directions or to implement directions or to work independently. That's the kind of stuff it takes them to be successful, right? So how many opportunities do we get to practice when you've got a bunch of cool, caring adults wrapped around us that will guide us when we kind of mess up, right? That's you guys' job, right? So anyway, that's what we do.
The most important information we can give you right there. Oh, nope, one more. If you have a question, email Kelly.
Thank you for letting us come and talk. We always avail ourselves to come out to any school or district. We don't care where. We'll come and talk. It's always a good day when we get to go out and do that. It just is. So if you would like us to come out and amplify what was this and work with your colleagues, we will. And that's a good day when we get to do that. So thank you very much, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Okay, well, if you want Key and Peel to come out, visit with your district, Kyle and Kelly, they have done a really good job of, again, that we update these numbers every July 1, the charts. You get 3 times a year this information based off the most recent graduates. We update it once a year on the state report every July 1 based on the culmination of that year. So with that, Teresa, what are the Summer Impact Institutes? They are in Washburn in June 27th, 28th, still $25 a person for 2 days of professional development. Great time to get your teachers engaged or your staff just to come. They can get really wrapped into what we're doing, where we're headed. And then we have one in Pratt in July 17th and 18th in Pratt. So we always try to do one east, one west. I know Pratt's not technically west, but every university west of Pratt, everything out there, they're doing construction and stuff, so we weren't able to tap into that. So thanks, everybody. If you have questions, you need anything, you know how to get a hold of us. I hope you drive safe. I know that was a lot today, but we appreciate your time and attention, and the majority of you stayed awake through the whole thing. So we're making progress. So thanks, and have a good trip.